Chapter 1431. Irina used the power of the Tree of Life to restrain all the elven masters who were originally attacking her. Because they were afraid of hurting the Tree of Life, the elves held back when they attacked. Even if Helena ordered them to attack with all their might, no one wanted to bear the consequences of destroying the Tree of Life. This would definitely make them a sinner of the elven race. No one knew what kind of punishment the queen would face when she came out of seclusion. The night elves who were rescued from the cage also escaped successfully under the cover of the other elves. They rode fast horses and magic beasts and joined the group that was heading south. This was a large-scale resistance war that almost burned the entire the Wind Forest. Even many noble elves joined in to cover and help the low-level elves escape. The private soldiers of the nobles who were trying to capture the elves all stopped after Meg killed a few of the nobles who were leading them. Who is this? This is Alex we're talking about. No one had the courage to face him without a level 10 elven magic caster leading the group. The escaping elves gradually gathered together. There were already more than 10,000 of them. Under the organization of the core members of the Night Elves, they gradually formed a formation. The elves who did not have the ability to fight were protected in the middle. There were elites at the front to open the way, and powerful elves at the back to cover the rear. It was no longer a mess. Although the low-level elves were generally not strong, there were still level 5 and level 6 magic casters and archers among them. When there were enough of them gathered together, the small nobles who led the troops here could only temporarily avoid them. After making sure that all the elves who were willing to leave had joined the main group, Meg rode the purple-striped griffin and circled above the main group. He protected them as they left the Wind Forest and headed south to the territory of the goblins. Yesterday, Irina wrote a letter to the chief of the goblins requesting to cross the border. Although she did not get a response from the situation in the underground cavern last time, crossing the border should not be a big problem. As long as the night elves entered the territory of the goblins, they would basically be safe. The relationship between the goblins and the elves was not harmonious. The friendliness they had for the night elves was based on the idea that the enemy of an enemy was a friend. But the goblins would never let the pursuers from the Wind Forest enter their territory. I have to hurry up. Meg looked at the colorful sky in the direction of the Tree of Life with a solemn expression. Although the Tree of Life was supporting her, he could still imagine how intense the battle Irina was going through was. After stopping the 3 groups of elves from approaching and making sure that the leading elf could lead all the elves out of the Wind Forest, Meg turned around with Ozzy and sped towards the Tree of Life. The violent explosions gradually became clear. Life Square had already been reduced to rubble and craters. Many high-grade elves were lying on the ground, moaning in pain. In the center of the battle, Irina stood proudly above the Tree of Life with her law enforcer staff in hand. Every time she swung it, there would be bursts of holy light that collided with the countless magic spells that were bombarding her and then burst into gorgeous sparks. The Tree of Life emitted a dazzling green light, forming a spherical green barrier around Irina's body, blocking most of the magic attacks and giving her the strongest protection. However, the light of the green barrier was rapidly weakening, as if it would be broken at any time. Once the barrier was broken, the countless magic spells would land on Irina's body, and the battle would be over. Helena had already received the latest report of the situation. The slave rebellion came very suddenly and broke out almost at the same time. It was completely out of her expectations, and Alex's obstruction made them lose the chance to remedy the situation. The Wind Forest was in chaos now, and she couldn't personally lead troops into the goblin territory to hunt down those traitors. Irina, I was right about you. Compared to the other young people, your schemes and methods are already more mature than Her Majesty back then. Helena looked at Irina with a hint of disappointment in her eyes. She had also placed a lot of hope on Irina, and even now, she still hadn't announced that she had given birth to a child with Alex. If Her Majesty wants to blame someone, then let her blame me. In order to protect this forest that we've worked so hard to protect, I must kill you today, Helena said with a cold expression. She reached into the crystal ball in front of her and slowly pulled out a pure black magic caster's staff. Her aura suddenly became as deep as the starry sky, and the starry sky domain that was torn apart by the holy light gathered again. Spots of starlight lit up and started to move in the starry sky. Looking at Irina's crumbling barrier, the eyes of the surrounding elves lit up. Their efforts were useful after all. Helena has indeed concealed her strength. I'm afraid Princess Irina won't be able to hold on for much longer. Vincent, who was outside the battlefield, looked at Helena, who had pulled out her black magic caster staff, and Irina's barrier that was about to shatter. He grabbed Blower, who was about to charge forward, and stuffed a token into his hand. He looked into his eyes and said in a low voice, "My tribesmen should be in the army heading south now. I don't ask you to make them rich, but I hope you can lead them to live freely. Leave this to me. Go." "Father." Blower looked at the chief's token in his hand and suddenly raised his head to look at Vincent. His eyes reddened immediately. "I'll be the one to keep this name." Vincent pushed Blower back forcefully and reached out to pull out the silver longsword at his waist. He stepped onto the white eagle that was swooping down and rushed toward Elliot, who was the closest to him. He was a 9th-tier swordsman that was not commonly seen among the elves. Meanwhile, dozens of hidden elves rushed toward the battlefield from outside the battlefield. Arrows were knocked on their bowstrings, and the magic caster's staff was glowing as they shot toward the elves that were surrounding Irina. Bam! Right at this moment, the barrier that the Tree of Life provided for Irina finally shattered after withstanding countless magic attacks. "Sorry to keep you waiting." Right at this moment, a low voice exploded in the ears of all the elves. A purple lightning bolt flew over from the sky and plunged into the starry sky domain. It went straight for Helena and appeared in front of her in the blink of an eye. The Tian-Du sword was unsheathed, and the sharp blade tore through the pitch-black starry sky domain. Then it slashed down toward Helena, who had raised her magic caster's staff. The purple-striped griffin also raised its sharp claws and clawed toward Helena. A hint of panic flashed across Helena's eyes. It was very dangerous for a magic caster to be close to a knight. Countless layers of disposable magic barriers appeared around her instantly. At the same time, she retracted her magic caster's staff that was originally pointed at Irina and pointed it at Meg. She shouted, "Meteor fall." Chapter 1432. When the long sword landed on the magic barrier, it was as if it had struck layers of steel plates. Dazzling sparks burst forth, and the layers of magic barriers were being visibly whittled away. It was rather unstoppable. The purple-striped griffin's golden claws also struck the magic barrier viciously, accelerating the destruction of the magic barrier. It seemed to be unstoppable, but no one knew that Meg's hand, which was holding onto the long sword, was already trembling slightly under his robe. He was only a 9th-tier warrior now. After all, hacking at a 10th-tier magic barrier was like hacking at a wire with a kitchen knife, creating sparks and lightning along the way. However, only he knew the pain involved. Hence, when there were only 3 thin, but also the most resilient, layers left, he suddenly retracted his hand and pressed lightly on Ozzy's back. Ozzy instantly changed its direction and slid past Helena. Almost at the same time, 3 silver meteors crashed where the griffin had just been, leaving 3 large craters in the ground. After the purple-striped griffin had shaken off Helena, it rushed toward a 10th-tier elven magic caster who was condensing a spell not far away. The elven magic caster looked on in horror as he was sent flying. Even though 3 or 4 magic barriers had been erected around his body in that instant, he was still sent flying for hundreds of meters. After crashing into a large tree, he was completely buried. The purple-striped griffin transformed into a bolt of purple lightning and darted among the elven magic casters like a wolf in a flock of sheep. With its extreme speed, the purple-striped griffin's powerful strength, and Meg's powerful verbal attacks, the elven magic caster's formation was completely disrupted. The elves, who were proficient in magic attacks, were clearly a little flustered after being attacked at such close range. The elves, who couldn't even fend for themselves, were naturally unable to attack Irina effectively. Vincent, are you planning to lead the Billy family to betray the elven race? Elliot took a few steps back and sneered at Vincent, who was holding a long sword. There was a hint of surprise and joy in his eyes. Princess Irina is right. The elven race doesn't need any power or official position. What we really need is to return to our natural instincts and freedom. Without these things, elves are no longer elves. Vincent held his sword with both hands, and his gaze gradually sharpened as he looked at Elliot. I think what you're doing now is wrong, so I'm going to lead the Billy family back to the right path. This is not a betrayal. This is a correction. Seeing as you've chosen a side with Irina, that means you've already declared the end of the Billy family. In that case, the engagement between Sally and Blower will naturally cease to exist. Elliot pointed his magic caster staff at Vincent and sneered, "Then you and your family can die together." The space was frozen in an instant. The ice blast spell killed the white eagle instantly, and Vincent landed on the ice surface lightly. He tapped his feet on the ice surface and dodged the icicles and exploding ice balls that filled the sky. He swung his sword and cut down the ice wall in front of him and quickly approached Elliot. Similar battles were taking place all over the battlefield at the same time. The elves who chose to support Irina were attacking the surrounding elves without any regard for their own safety. Even though they were not strong enough, they did not hesitate. Blower held the token and backed away with bloodshot eyes. "Let's go." Sally suddenly appeared beside him. She grabbed his wrist and dragged him into the nearby forest. "The princess will definitely be able to escape. You have to leave right away. Otherwise, you won't be able to escape once the princess and Alex leave." Sally looked at Blower and said, "A battle like this is already beyond our control. However, today will definitely be recorded in the history books of the elven race." Blower gradually calmed down. He turned to Sally and asked, "What about you? Aren't you going to leave with me?" Sally shook her head and said, "I'm going to stay. Even though the slaves have been freed, the elven race is still plagued with chronic diseases. I'm still useful to Helena. Perhaps I can still do something to change the elven race. Take care." Blower looked at Sally with a meaningful expression before turning to leave. "By the way, say hello to Boss and Amy for me. I really miss the taste of the rainbow fried rice," Sally said softly. "All right." Blower didn't turn back and quickly disappeared into the forest. "I guess I won't be able to see him again for a long time," Sally murmured to herself as she looked in the direction that Blower had disappeared in. She then turned to look at Alex, who was riding a purple-striped griffin and weaving in and out of the elven army. Would her Mr. Right appear? Or perhaps all she wanted was a war man who could cook? Even though the battlefield was in chaos, Helena's side still held an absolute advantage in terms of power. They quickly suppressed the elven rebellion with their numerical advantage and gradually stabilized the situation. "Your Highness, hurry up and leave." An elderly elf yelled at Irina. However, his heart was instantly punctured by several arrows, and he fell to the ground with wide eyes. Similar scenes were happening all over the battlefield. They weren't powerful, but they were determined to give their lives in order to buy some time for Irina to escape before they died tragically. Meg severed the arm of a 10th-tier great magic caster with his sword. He looked back at the dead elves with a grave expression, and then at Irina, who was standing at the top of the Tree of Life, trying to provide some assistance to the elves. He turned his griffin around and flew toward her. "Let's go," Meg yelled as the griffin approached the Tree of Life. Irina hesitated momentarily before jumping onto the griffin's back. "It's time for us to go." Meg looked at the elves who had been surrounded, and his heart sank. Darkness had descended again, and the starry sky magic was becoming more powerful. Irina replied with a pitiful look on her face. "Azee, charge out," Mag said. At the same time, he held the long sword with both hands and slashed forward. A crack was torn open in the black curtain. "Howl!" Azee let out a long howl. It flapped its wings and rushed out of the crack. Meg looked back and saw the elven swordsman sever Elliot's arm. Almost at the same time, He was surrounded and drowned in the bombardment of magic. He had seen this swordsman in the elves' information before. Vincent, the leader of the Bybilly family, a cautious elf, and Blower's father. The purple-striped griffin rushed out of the crack in the starry sky domain and quickly flew toward the south. The wind forest, which was covered in smoke, seemed to have just gone through a catastrophe. Burned buildings were everywhere. Change is never easy, Meg consoled softly as he turned to look at the silent Irina. She hugged Mag gently from behind and pressed her face against his back. She didn't say anything else, but hugged Mag gently from behind and pressed her face against his back. Chapter 1433. At the border between the goblins and the wind forest, tens of thousands of goblin soldiers were stationed in front of the canyon. A goblin general looked at the elves who were charging towards the canyon from afar. He squinted and then raised his hand. Remove the barricade and let them pass. The huge rock in front of the canyon was removed, and a smooth path was made. The night elves who were charging at the front had already received Irina's instructions. They led the team into the canyon quickly and passed through it quickly. The team of close to 20,000 people entered the canyon very quickly. The goblin soldiers quickly sealed off the canyon and faced the wind forest. The purple-striped griffin glided over the canyon and followed the elves south. Boss, the one sitting on that purple-striped griffin just now was Alex, right? Who else has a purple-striped griffin other than him? Who else can be carried by Princess Irina? Boss, you seem to be a little jealous. Scram! The older goblin slapped the younger goblin's hand away and retracted his envious gaze. He clenched his longbow tightly as he looked at the elves circling on the other side of the border. The atmosphere at the border became a little tense. However, this standoff didn't last for too long. About half an hour later, the elves seemed to have received the order to retreat. Although they were unwilling, they still quickly retreated from the border. Meg heaved a sigh of relief after making sure that the wind forest didn't choose to continue their pursuit. He looked at the elves below and said, I wonder if Chaos City will accept so many night elves into the city. Once they do, it would mean that they have completely severed ties with the wind forest. That's Michael and Roland's problem. If they don't want to accept them, then I will find a place outside Chaos City as the temporary base for the night elves. With these 20,000 elves, the night elves will have the confidence to establish themselves in this world, Irina said calmly. She wasn't worried about that at all. That's good too. Meg nodded. The elves' ability to survive in the wild was not for show. As long as they stayed away from the wind forest and did not face the elven army head-on, survival would not be a problem. You go back first and make lunch for Xiaomi and Anna. I will follow them to the south to avoid any trouble, Irina said to Meg. Meg thought for a moment and nodded. All right, I'll leave Ozzy to you. The purple-striped griffin stopped at the top of a nearby mountain. Meg jumped off the griffin's back and watched as Irina left. Then, he summoned the mobile restaurant and entered the mobile restaurant in flight mode. He clicked on the automatic return function and closed his eyes to rest. 20,000 elves was not a small number, and it was clearly unrealistic to take all of them into the factory. He had to think carefully about how to arrange them in a way that wouldn't incur the displeasure of the natives of Chaos City, and at the same time, wouldn't make the elves feel uncomfortable. Where did the boss go? Outside Amy's, a young girl with the orc ears was leaning against the floor-to-ceiling window with her hands covering her eyes. She was trying her best to look into the restaurant, but the window was usually transparent, so she couldn't see what was going on in the restaurant at all. She rang the bell and knocked on the door, but no one answered. What are you doing? A voice came from behind her. Wow, Connie was shocked. She turned around and pressed herself against the floor-to-ceiling window. She looked at Meg, who suddenly appeared, in horror. Boss, why did you suddenly appear? I've been here for quite a while. You were too engrossed in watching. Meg shrugged. He looked at Connie, who had changed into a long cotton dress and a mask, and helplessly said, Isn't it a rest day today? Other than your sense of direction, don't tell me you've also lost your sense of time? No, I know it's a rest day today. Connie took off her mask and blushed. She quickly shook her head and looked at Meg. She was a little hesitant. She looked left and right to make sure there was no one around. She moved closer to Meg and whispered, "There's something I want to talk to you about. Can we find a place where there's no one around and be alone for a while?" Meg looked meaningfully at Connie, who was blushing. Could it be that this girl wanted to confess? Although she was a cute girl with the orc ears, and her body was soft and delicate, but he was a married man, and he wasn't interested in little girls. "Come in." Meg opened the door to the restaurant and said. Connie hurried to catch up with him. She closed and locked the door of the dining room. Mag glanced at the door that was locked from the inside, and then watched as Connie's shy expression slowly turned into a strange smile. Her reserved gaze also started to sparkle with eagerness. He had a bad feeling about this. "Come on." Meg crossed his arms. Come? Come for what?" Connie was startled and looked at Meg in confusion. Ahem. Meg also realized that his expression was a little wrong. And didn't this girl want to? He coughed awkwardly. "Didn't you say you had something to say to me?" "Yes, I do have something to say to you." Connie's eyes lit up, and she looked at Meg with a burning gaze. She slowly approached him and said, "Boss, there's something I've been keeping in my heart for a long time, but I never had the chance to tell you. Today I have to tell you. Let's talk nicely. Don't come so close. I can't even see your face." Meg was unknowingly forced into a corner. He looked at Connie, who didn't even reach his shoulders. Because she was too close, he could only see a pair of white orc ears when he looked down. Perhaps it was because Mag's breath was too hot. That pair of pinkish-white beast ears twitched and turned a little red. "Can't see? Am I that short?" Connie was a little angry. She jumped up and put her hands and feet on the wall. She was half a head taller than Meg and said proudly, "What about now? I can see it now. Say it." Meg looked at Connie, who suddenly pressed him against the wall like a cicada and nodded helplessly. This girl's brain was indeed wired differently. However, with such a strange and somewhat ambiguous position, this girl couldn't really want to. Connie stared at Meg for a long time, and her face became redder and redder. Her hands and feet began to tremble because she had been supporting herself for too long. A drop of cold sweat slid down her forehead and dripped onto Meg's shoes. Meg was a little tired from standing against the wall. He could only comfort her. "It's okay, relax. Everyone has a first time for this kind of thing. Just say it boldly." She was a little girl, so he should be more understanding. When he first confessed, he even put the love letter in the wrong drawer. In the end, the fat girl who sat next to his sister chased after him for a whole year and called him scumbag. Life was always so unexpected. I forgot what I wanted to say." Connie's hands went limp and fell to the ground. Chapter 1434. Meg hurriedly reached out to catch her. He looked helplessly at Connie, who was hugging his arm, and said, "That's enough. Don't hang on me like a monkey. You won't die even if you fall. Even if I don't die, it will still hurt." Connie got down from Meg and said righteously, Okay. You're right." Meg didn't want to argue with this girl. After all, it wasn't the first time she forgot her lines. He looked at Connie and said, "Why don't you sit down and eat first, then think about it?" "Sure." Connie nodded. She turned around and found a chair to sit down and think seriously. Meg looked at Connie and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He looked at the clock. It was already 11 o'clock. It was time to prepare lunch. He had already taken a shower on the way back. He went upstairs to change into his chef's uniform and apron and was about to enter the kitchen. "Boss, I remember now." Connie suddenly appeared at the kitchen door and stopped Meg. She then raised her right hand and said, "Look, my hand." Meg looked at Connie's right hand. Although her soft and round fingers were a little short, they looked quite cute. He nodded and said, "Your fingers are a little short, but it's okay. It won't affect your eating." "No, it's this." Connie suddenly clenched her fist. 3 sharp white claws shot out from between her fingers like short blades. They were about 20 centimeters long. Wolverine? A thought popped up in Mag's mind. Compared to Wolverine's black sharp claws, Connie's white claws looked much gentler. They were more like the claws of a cat, but they were still unusually sharp. "Isn't it cool?" Connie waved her claws and said proudly, "It is pretty cool." Meg nodded. It seemed like this was a new talent that Connie had just discovered. However, she was so mysterious. She locked the door and pinned him against the wall like a cicada. Was she here to show off her little claws? Actually, what I want to say is that I'm leaving. Connie retracted his sharp claws. His expression darkened, and his voice became much lower. Leave? Meg paused and looked at Connie, who was looking down. Where are you going? Actually, I haven't been telling you the truth all this while. I'm from the Fok tribe, and I'm the daughter of the chief of the Fok tribe. Because my uncle Gary started a coup, killed my father and mother, captured my elder brother, and occupied the Fok tribe. I was the only one who escaped. Connie looked at Meg apologetically and said, I heard that Gary is going to kill my brother 8 days later and make himself the new chief. I have to go back and save my brother. Meg looked at Connie. Actually, he knew all this. He also knew that Gary was a powerful 10th tier orc. He frowned and asked, Can you do it? I'm very powerful now. I can sneak into the 18th floor of the Bot-Eye prison in one go, and I won't get caught. Connie nodded. No, I'm just worried that you'll get lost at home. Meg sighed. That's where I grew up. Connie glared, but she was obviously not confident. Although I'll get lost occasionally, it's very rare. If you want to go back and save your brother, are you going back alone or with your master? Meg asked again. Of course I'm going back alone. Master said that I can only do this by myself. As an outsider, he's not suitable to be involved, Connie said matter-of-factly. But there was a hint of helplessness in her expression. Her shoulders also unconsciously drooped a little. Meg looked at Connie and placed his hand on her shoulder gently. He smiled and said, I think we should discuss this with everyone. You're a member of our restaurant. I believe everyone will be willing to help you. But, Connie looked up, but it's a holiday today, so let's discuss it tomorrow when everyone is here. Your opponent is not one bad guy, but a group of bad guys. If you choose to fight alone, we might not even be able to retrieve your corpse. Meg interrupted Connie and shook his head slightly. Boss. Connie looked at Meg, who had a warm smile on his face, and was touched. She said, You're really a good person. Ding. Good person card, +1. The system's voice sounded in Meg's mind. Meg's lips twitched. He had a toothache. Then it settled. I'll cook for lunch. You can go to the ice cream shop and ask them to come over for lunch. Meg walked towards the kitchen. He had been thinking about what to do about Connie and the Fok tribe recently. He had thought of many plans, but he hadn't decided which one to use yet. However, Connie wanted to go back to the Fok tribe and save her brother. That gave him some new inspiration. All right, Connie replied and walked towards the door. Go out and turn left. If you climb over the wall on the right, you'll reach the prison. Don't habitually turn right, Meg reminded. Connie, who was about to turn right, quickly stopped in her tracks. She touched her ear and turned left awkwardly. Not long after, Amy and Mia arrived at the restaurant. Amy threw Ugly Duckling onto a chair at the side and walked around the restaurant. She looked at Meg curiously and asked, Father, where's big sister Irina? She probably went out. We can eat lunch by ourselves. Meg smiled. It would take at least 2 days to travel from the Wind Forest south to Chaos City, even on a unicorn. Irina had to escort the Night Elf south, so she definitely wouldn't be back today. Oh, Amy was a little disappointed, but she still washed her hands obediently and sat at the table. Boss, the ice cream shop's menu hasn't been updated for a long time. Can we add something else? For example, desserts or something like that? Mia asked Meg during lunch. Meg pondered. He really didn't have any desserts that could be added to the menu. However, he still had a 100% chance of getting a top-tier recipe from the Lucky Wheel. He didn't know what he would get, so he could only shake his head and say, I don't have any good desserts ideas at the moment. Let me think about it. Yabamia nodded and didn't ask any more questions. After lunch, Amy and Anna followed Mia and the rest to the ice cream shop. There were many children there to play with, so only Meg was left in the restaurant. All right, then let me see what this high-grade roulette can spin. Meg closed the restaurant's door, pulled out a chair, and sat down. He entered the Lucky Wheel's interface in his mind and looked at the one chance shown on it. He used his mind to push the Lucky Wheel. The Lucky Wheel started spinning, and the words on it gradually became clear. Sichuan Mapo Tofu, Westlake fish and vinegar, flying dragon soup. Wu-Wei smoked duck, dompa pork, steamed preserved flavor, spicy chicken, don and chicken, steamed Wu-Chang fish bookhouse reading website. Chapter 1435. Ding! Congratulations, host. You have drawn a classic Sichuan dish, husband and wife lung slice. The spinning wheel slowly stopped as the system's voice sounded. Wait, system, didn't you say it's a high-level recipe? Is husband and wife lung slice considered a high-level dish? Meg raised his eyebrows. Although he had no ill intentions toward husband and wife lung slice, he felt that it was still inferior to Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Host, husband and wife lung slice is a classic Sichuan dish that is second only to wife biscuit in terms of cruelty. It has an extremely high and special status in Sichuan cuisine. The authentic husband and wife lung slice is not inferior to any other delicacies. Are you using real husband and wife? Meg asked. System, husband and wife lung slice. Meg opened his eyes and muttered softly. He was not disappointed, as the restaurant did not have any braised dishes yet. It was good to let the foodies in this world see the depth of Chinese cuisine. However, whether or not the name of the dish would cause some bad associations was not something he could control. Meg looked up at his watch. It was still early, so he prepared to go upstairs to read. The mystery of the great old one that shrouded this world had not been solved yet. He needed to find more inspiration from the Cthulhu mythos. Ding! At this moment, the bell rang outside the door. There's a guest who doesn't know that today is a rest day? Meg raised his eyebrows slightly, but out of courtesy, he still got up and walked to the door. He looked out from the door and opened the door in surprise. He saw Gloria standing in front of the door and said, Miss Gloria, why are you here? Gloria presented a golden invitation letter to Meg with both hands and smiled. Mr. Meg, I'm here to give you the invitation letter. The day after tomorrow is the Aiden Chamber of Commerce's year-end celebration. As one of the directors, I can invite a few friends to attend. I hope that you and everyone in the restaurant can attend. Meg accepted the invitation. He had been so busy recently that he had forgotten about it. Gloria had mentioned that she wanted to invite him, so he naturally couldn't refuse now. He nodded slightly and said, Okay, if there are no conflicts on the day, we'll come. I look forward to seeing you and everyone else, Gloria said with a smile before she left. Miss Gloria is a business genius, but I wonder how she's doing with the board of directors. Meg muttered as he watched Gloria leave. However, he didn't think too much about it. He didn't have the energy to help her right now. Miss, the Dodges family should have already conspired with the Marquis family. They will stand on Cyril's side during the year-end meeting and vote to remove you from your director's seat. Mars sat across from Gloria with a black notebook on his lap. We need to meet Thompson and Cassis this afternoon. If they are willing to stand on your side, our chances of winning will increase. Okay, Gloria nodded. She thought for a moment and said, But I need to go to Teacher Luna's place in the afternoon. I promised to provide the second batch of winter clothes. I need to confirm the children's clothes sizes with her. I heard that there are more children recently. We should be able to make it in time. Mars nodded. He looked at Gloria with gratification. He was surprised by her business talent and growth speed. However, it was rare that she didn't lose her kindness. Gloria was silent for a while. Suddenly, she asked, Mars, do you think we will fail? No matter how you look at it, you are already very successful. Even if you can't continue to be the director of the Aiden Chamber of Commerce and the successor of Family Moreton, you and Suede Apparel will become a great company. You will even surpass Family Moreton's current achievements in the future, Mars said with a smile. Really? Gloria looked at Mars with surprise. The premise is that you can maintain your current enthusiasm and serious attitude towards your career. Mars nodded. I think I will. A confident smile appeared on Gloria's face. Mars looked at Gloria and smiled. His father helped Master Jeffrey build Family Moreton. Now, he might be on his way to do the same. In a luxurious private room, the ambiguous light shone on the faces of the men and women who were indulging in debauchery. Cyril had his arm around a golden-haired woman, and he raised his wine glass to everyone as he said, To our friendship, cheers. Cheers. Everyone raised their glasses. Master Cyril, after the year-end celebration the day after tomorrow, Gloria will be dismissed. You will be the only successor of Family Moreton. In the future, you will be the head of Family Moreton and the president of the Aiden Chamber of Commerce. We will depend on you in the future. A chubby middle-aged man said with a smile. The other people in the private room also quickly flattered him. Cyril was flattered by everyone's praise. He nodded and said, "Well said, well said. As long as it is done the day after tomorrow, I, Cyril, will never forget you." Huh, you want to fight with me? Gloria, you're still too young. When I become the head of Family Moreton, I would drive your whole family out. Let's see what you are without the protection of Family Moreton. Cyril drank the wine and rubbed the woman in his arms. He sneered and thought to himself. It was as if he could already see Gloria being dismissed at the year-end celebration 3 days later. When night fell, Mag told Amy and Anna a bedtime story. After seeing that the two little fellows had fallen asleep, he turned off the lights and went out quietly. He was going to read for a while more. You have another woman's scent on you. Mag had just closed the door gently when a cold voice came from behind him. Wow, Meg was startled. When he turned around, he saw Irina leaning over and sniffing him. There was a hint of danger in her beautiful eyes. Meg was a little surprised by Irina's sensitive nose. He took the initiative to take out the invitation and explained, "This afternoon, Miss Gloria came by and gave me an invitation. She invited me to attend the Aiden Chamber of Commerce's year-end celebration the day after tomorrow." You didn't join that Chamber of Commerce. Why did she invite you? Irina glanced at the invitation. The woman's fragrance came from it. Probably because I am her chief designer. I can be considered a business partner. As the representative of the Aiden Chamber of Commerce, she has the authority to invite some friends to attend, Meg said. Huh, that's probably because she doesn't have any friends. Irina chuckled. Meg actually didn't know how to refute. Have a night elf arrived at Chaos City? Meg asked as he kept the invitation. No, I found a place for them to rest first. Because there are too many of them, they will only arrive the day after tomorrow. Irina shook her head. Then she looked at Meg and seriously said, I'm starving. You go and make me something nice to eat. All right, order whatever you want to eat. Meg nodded with a smile and walked towards the stairs. Let's have a beggar's chicken first. I saw many wild chickens on the way here today, Irina said without hesitation. What a pitiful chicken. Meg raised his eyebrows and observed a moment of silence for the unfortunate chicken that replaced the wild chickens. Chapter 1436. A beggar's chicken, a spicy grilled fish, and a 6-inch durian pizza. Mag sat across from Irina and looked at her elegantly munching on a chicken drumstick with a smile as he said, I want to buy the piece of land near the current factory and then unify it into a factory to form a large-scale industrial zone that can accommodate 20,000 elves. On top of that, I'll open a few other factories. What do you think? Irina thought for a while and said, if we can let them settle down and earn an income through labor and work with dignity, this is not a bad idea. Then I'll go take a look at the land tomorrow. Meg nodded. The abilities of these elven slaves were generally not high, and they were not good at fighting. It was obviously unrealistic to let them wear armor and fight with the Wind Forest. On the battlefield, they were not even considered cannon fodder. No need. I'll go directly to the city lord's mansion. I'm very rich now. Irina waved the space bracelet in her hand. I was bored on the road yesterday, so I went back and looted 2 of their vaults. They are too full, so I have to make some space. Looting? Meg looked at Irina. He could not help but admire his wife's courage. He just did not know which lord was so miserable. Not only did all his slaves run away, but even his vaults were looted. That's good. I'll gradually finalize the specific project over the next few days. Let's let them have a place to settle down and stay first. Meg thought it was right. If he was too deeply involved, it would inevitably arouse suspicion. Moreover, the most important thing in this matter was whether the city lord's mansion would agree. After all, there were many elves this time. After dinner, Irina went upstairs to wash up. After a tiring day, she quickly fell asleep. Meg read for a while in the study, then returned to his room and lay on the bed. He planned to learn the husband and wife lung slice tonight. He opened the shiny experience bag, and the experience of making the husband and wife lung slice rushed into his mind. He quickly absorbed and digested it. About 10 minutes later, Meg pushed open the door of the test field for the god of cookery. Father. On the high tower, Sean, who was dressed in military attire, bowed slightly to Andre, who was standing by the window, respectfully. You just returned from a northwest border. Have you heard about the elves? Andre asked as he turned to look at Sean. His gaze lingered on his dusty armor for a while. Sean nodded. I heard about it on my way to the palace. The Wind Forest's internal strife and the Slaves' Rebellion have already been taken down under Irina's protection. What do you think? After this battle, the elves' vitality, the elves' hearts, and the elves' loyalty, Sean said. After this battle, the elves, 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 and the elves. Sean said to Andre in a low voice, I think the elves are no longer qualified to be the Roth Empire's ally. Perhaps we can send our cavalry into the Wind Forest during their internal strife to suppress and subdue the elves. Oh, Andre's eyes revealed a hint of surprise. Father, please forgive me for my rashness. Sean panicked as though he realized he had said something wrong. It's all right. Andre raised his hand and asked with a smile, if the Roth Empire were to send their troops against the elves, how many troops do you think we would need to take down the Wind Forest? Sean pondered for a while and said, while the elves in the Wind Forest are in a state of panic, we only need to deploy 100,000 elite cavalrymen from the Northwest Army, 5 10th tier knights, and 5 great magic casters to attack the Wind Forest directly. We would be able to take down the Wind Forest in less than 10 days. Huh, you're underestimating the Wind Forest, Andre said with a smile. Andre chuckled, but there was a hint of satisfaction in his eyes as he looked at Sean. He continued, back then, the 300,000-strong demon army invaded the Wind Forest, but they were unable to reach the Tree of Life. Although the Elven Queen is in seclusion, you can't treat her as dead. Sean lowered his head and humbly said, yes, I didn't think it through. Andre turned to look at the starry sky outside again and suddenly smiled. It's not impossible to double the number of troops. Sean looked up suddenly, and a glint flashed across his eyes. However, why should we attack them? They're just a bunch of fellows who have learned a little about us. Let them entertain themselves and use them as cannon fodder when we need them. Isn't that good? Yes, sir. Shaoan nodded respectfully. Andre raised his hand and said, you're tired too. Go back and rest. If you have time in a few days, go to Chaos City and bring Vanessa back. Vanessa's in Chaos City? Sean was a little surprised, but quickly regained his composure. He acknowledged respectfully, and then turned to leave this tower that was on par with the Magus Tower. Sean is indeed more like me, but he's still a little too confident. He needs to sharpen his edge a little more. Andre said softly after Sean left. He seemed to be talking to himself, but also seemed to be talking to someone. At the top of the Magus Tower, in the president's office. President, what do you think I should do now? Helena, that bitch, didn't take my words seriously at all. Now that Irina has tens of thousands of elven troops, she's no longer fighting alone. Josh smashed the crystal cup in his hand angrily and looked at Richard, who was sitting opposite him. His face was a little pale, and his eyes were bloodshot. He looked like he hadn't had a good rest. Richard waved his hand to sweep away the crystal shards on the ground. He looked at Josh and said in a low voice, Your Highness, you should be even calmer at times like this. Otherwise, how can you achieve great things? You have to remember that you're going to become the king of the Roth Empire. How can you lose your cool because of a woman? But I can't accept this. Why can that useless Alex have her? I'm clearly better than him in everything, but I can only miss her time and time again. I've already crippled him. Josh gritted his teeth with indignation written all over his face. Richard flicked his finger, and a droplet of water flew toward Josh. It then exploded in his face as if a cup of cold water had been splashed on his face. He said in a cold voice, Your Highness, you have to know one thing. If you become the king of the Roth Empire, then everything in this world will be yours. If you fail, then you'll lose not only Irina, but also everything you have now, including your life. As for those of us who follow you, our lives are all tied to you." Josh shuddered from the cold water splashing on his face. He looked at the stern Richard and seemed to have sobered up instantly. He hurriedly stood up and bowed respectfully as a student. He earnestly said, "Master, I know my mistake." Chapter 1437. The Orcs, the Fawk Tribe. Chief, according to the news from the various capture teams, we still haven't found any traces of Princess Connie. An orc quickly walked into a cave and respectfully reported to the tall and skinny orc sitting on the high seat. "Useless." Gary grabbed the plate next to him and smashed it at that orc. He angrily said, "A bunch of useless fellows. You can't even catch a little lass. What use do I have for you?" That orc's head was smashed by the stone plate until it was bleeding, but he didn't dare to dodge or take a step back. He knelt on the ground and didn't dare to move. "So be it if we didn't catch her. She's just a useless lass. What can she do?" Gary quickly calmed down and revealed a smug smile. "I will be the real chief of the Fawk Tribe in a few days' time. After killing my adorable nephew, I will be the only successor." Meg woke up early in the morning and reached out to turn off the ringing alarm clock at the side. He quickly got up and washed up before changing into a clean chef suit. He stood in front of the mirror and tidied his hair. After making sure that everything looked neat and tidy, he went downstairs to prepare breakfast for everyone. Everyone came to the dining room one after another. During breakfast, Meg looked at everyone and said, "Before we eat, I have something to discuss with everyone. I would like to know if anyone has any suggestions." "Is Father going to make something new again?" Amy asked curiously. Everyone also looked at Meg curiously. He seemed to be releasing new products quite frequently recently. "No, it's about Connie." Meg shook his head with a smile and raised his hand to gesture to Connie, who was sitting at the side. Connie stood up and waved at everyone stiffly before sitting down again. Meg didn't understand why she was doing that awkwardly, but he still continued. "Connie came to look for me yesterday. She said she was leaving." "Leaving? Where to? Are you going home?" Barbara looked at Connie nervously. Their relationship had been pretty good recently. "Yes, Connie. Where are you going?" Mia and the rest also looked at Connie with concern. Connie opened her mouth. She looked at everyone, but didn't know where to start. Meg raised his hand to signal for everyone to be quiet for now, and then said, "Let me say it. It's like this." He briefly told everyone what had happened to Connie, and how she wanted to return to the Fawk Tribe to save her elder brother, as well as how she killed her father's murderer. After hearing Mag's words, the restaurant fell silent instantly. Everyone was looking at Connie with pity, but they didn't know how to console her at that moment. "I thought it was something big. Now that we have a target, a plan, and a time, we could just fight back." Irina scooped up a spoonful of tofu pudding and took a sip before looking at Connie. "Can't beat them? Let me help you." Connie looked up at Irina with sparkling eyes. She had the urge to kowtow to her. Don't do that now. We have to be harmonious." Meg quickly stopped her. She almost ruined the plan. "Yes, it's just a jerk uncle. There are many of them, but there are many people in our restaurant." Barbara nodded. She put her hand on Connie's shoulder and seriously said, "I'll help you beat him up, too. I want to go, too." Gina raised her hand. "If all of you want to go, then count me in," Camilla said calmly as she picked up her congee with pork and century egg. Mia raised her hand and said, "Although I'm not very powerful now, I can carry everyone there." "I'm going, too," Elizabeth said coldly. She had long wanted to beat up her bad uncle. She would just treat it as practice in advance. Amy raised her hand and said seriously, "AI the killer, ready." Everyone. Connie looked at everyone who had expressed their opinions. Her eyes turned red, and tears were already glistening in her eyes. Meg looked at everyone and said, "Since everyone has expressed their opinions, Amy's will send a special operation team for Connie's brother's rescue mission. Jane, Raina, and Anna are non-combatants, so they won't be counted as combat units. As for the rest of you, we will design a plan to complete the rescue mission while protecting ourselves as much as possible." "Boss, you're also a non-combatant, right?" Mia asked Meg. Everyone looked at Meg. Although Meg had always given everyone the impression that he was wise and resourceful, in terms of combat ability, he was indeed just an ordinary person who knew how to cook. Air, Meg murmured. It was all his fault for hiding his abilities. Now, it became a problem for him to prove that he wasn't incapable. He couldn't possibly reveal that he was Alex, right? Although he can't fight, his verbal cannon skill is comparable to 3 10th tier great magic casters, Irina said with a chuckle. Everyone thought for a while, and actually nodded. In terms of reasoning, no one could win against the boss. Meg, what could he do? He was also in despair. His qualification to participate in the battle was actually obtained through his verbal cannon skill. As the second largest orc tribe, although the Fog tribe's strength has decreased after the coup, they still have 3 10th tier powerhouses. We only have a few days left to prepare, and we need to come up with a complete plan. Do not tell anyone about this. Everyone, remember, Meg said seriously to everyone. After the morning service, Meg rode his bicycle to the city lord's castle. After the guard announced his arrival, he was quickly invited into the city lord's castle and brought to Michael's office. Princess Irina just left. I didn't expect you to come, Mr. Mack. Michael stood up from behind the desk and chuckled at Meg. Meg's lips twitched. This sly old fox was implying something, but he still calmly said, "Is that so?" I didn't hear the princess say she was coming to the city lord's castle during breakfast this morning. Michael gestured for Meg to take a seat and smilingly said, "Mr. Mack, you might not know this, but Princess Irina did something big yesterday. She came to buy a huge piece of land from me this morning and is going to move 20,000 elves to Chaos City to stay there. This is a good thing for Chaos City. After all, other cities don't even have the chance to bring in talented elves. It's rather rare to see someone come to us on her own accord, and even buy her own land to build her own house," Meg also said with a smile. Yes, the city lord's castle happened to be short of money to build the railway recently. Princess Irina is really helping us in our hour of need. Michael nodded in agreement. City Lord, I'm not here to buy land today. I'm here to talk to you about the Fog tribe. Meg didn't continue to joke with Michael and went straight to the point. Michael also stopped smiling and asked Meg, "Has Mr. Mack thought of any good ideas? I need a legitimate reason to let Mamie's employees appear at the Fog tribe's chief's coronation ceremony," Meg said softly. Chapter 1438. After coming out of the city lord's manor, Meg went to the factory in the north of the city without stopping. All the machines had been assembled according to his requirements. Steam spinning machines stood in the spacious workshop. Although they looked simple and shabby compared to modern machines, they were the second combination of steel and steam engines in this world. They had epic-making significance. Meg was sure that these machines could complete the task of spinning. Moreover, their efficiency was more than 100 times that of ordinary female textile workers. However, because they didn't know how to use these machines, the night elves could only leave them idle. Currently, they were practicing archery and magic under the lead of Guard Captain Ashley. Meg found Ashley. This guard captain was rather sturdy compared to the slender figure of ordinary elves. She was one of Irina's most trusted elves. She was also the one in charge of restricting the behavior of the night elves and training them when Irina didn't do anything herself. "Mr. Meg, is there anything I can help you with?" Ashley looked at Meg and asked. She had always respected this human who had helped the night elves a lot. Meg smiled and said, "It's like this. I'm here today to teach everyone how to use the machines in the factory. I'll tell everyone how to use the machines to spin efficiently and let the factory start operating. Please wait a moment. I'll gather all the night elves." Ashley turned around and was about to leave. "Wait." Meg hurriedly stopped her. He took 2 steps forward and shook his head, saying, "There's no need to gather everyone first. As the restaurant is rather busy, I'd like to choose 10 night elves who are nimble and have good memories to teach in small classes. After they've mastered it, they'll teach the other elves." "All right, then please wait a moment, Mr. Meg. I'll go and find 10 elves." Ashley nodded and turned to leave quickly. Not long after, she brought back 10 elves. Meg looked at these elves. There were 5 males and 5 females, and their strength was all above level 6. They could be considered outstanding existences among the night elves in the factory. After all, the night elves in the factory were generally weaker. "Mr. Meg, do you think they're qualified?" Ashley asked. "Of course. Everyone, please follow me." Meg nodded quickly. What a joke. It was just spinning. If even a group of 6th level and 7th level elves couldn't do it, then wouldn't the requirements for the textile workers be too high? Meg led everyone into the production workshop. They first went to the boiler room and briefly introduced the steam boiler and the operating principle of the steam engine driven by it. "Excuse me, but will we be able to move those steel monsters outside if we light a fire here?" A female elf asked curiously. Just now, they had seen how huge those machines were. "Yes, this is the wonder of the steam engine." Meg nodded with a smile, but he didn't explain too many scientific principles to the group of magic casters. After making sure that the 3 male elves were in charge of burning the boiler, he taught them how to operate the boiler and gave each of them a manual to use the boiler. After that, he brought the rest of the elves to the production workshop. Meg was like a teacher, explaining to the elves how to use the textile machine to turn cotton into a complete piece of cotton cloth. Feeling the surprised and admiring gazes, Meg didn't show it on his face, but he was a little proud in his heart. Although he was standing on the shoulders of giants, it also showed that he hadn't taught his teacher everything that he had learned when he was a beginner. That's about the operation and explanation. I believe that everyone has already memorized it. However, if you want to become a qualified textile worker, you still need to continue to hone yourself on the assembly line. Mag looked at the elves with a smile and said, "Then, let's begin our first official operation." Although the elves were surprised that Meg let them start the operation so quickly, they quickly returned to their positions according to the previous arrangement. "Sorry to trouble you, but let the boiler room start burning the boiler." Meg looked at an elf who was in charge of the overall planning. That elf quickly left. Soon, black smoke rose from the chimney of the boiler room. Steam flowed into the workshop through the pipes and into the cylinder of the textile machine. Accompanied by the clicking sound of the gears, the steam spinning machine began to move. The cotton that was thrown into the spinning machine was swallowed by the machine. The dense and complicated machine moved back and forth, and thin cotton yarn began to appear. It automatically wound itself around the coil, and soon, a full coil was wrapped around it. The elves present stared at this scene with their eyes wide open. After a while, an elf finally reacted. He stepped forward and took off the coil that had already been wrapped and wrapped the cotton yarn around another wooden frame. Oh, one incredible thing. As long as you throw the cotton wool into that opening, the machine really spits out cotton yarn on its own. It's even more delicate and soft than the cotton yarn that ordinary women weave. An elf pulled out a cotton yarn and couldn't help but exclaim, "Yes, this kind of cotton yarn can be woven in a very good cloth. It should be able to sell for a very good price, right?" The most terrifying thing is the spinning efficiency of this machine. Even the most skilled women weaver's speed is not even 1% of the speed of this machine. Moreover, we don't have to do too much work. We only need to throw in the cotton wool and change the coil after the coil is wrapped. The elves were discussing spiritedly. During this period of time, they were still wondering what the steel blocks in the factory were used for. Now that they saw these big guys moving and spinning cotton yarn that was even more delicate than the women weavers, all the elves' doubts were dispelled. Now, all that was left was their admiration for Meg. What kind of godly machine was this? With this machine, wouldn't all the women weavers lose their jobs? Meg also picked up a roll of cotton yarn and looked at it. The quality of the cotton yarn was indeed good. The thickness was uniform, and the texture was soft. It could be seen that the stability of the machine was good. Looking at the spinning machine, the rolls of cotton yarn were formed. Meg suddenly realized that the birth of these cotton yarns might have a devastating impact on the textile industry of this world. This world was still in a primitive state of low efficiency when it came to single cotton yarn. The steam spinning machine was equivalent to jumping 2 big steps forward, leaving the whole world behind. When the production efficiency increases, the cost of labor will drop drastically. This will have a disruptive impact on the industry. It seems that I have a good dagger to stab that invincible empire." Meg was deep in thought, and a smile appeared on his face. The Roth Empire was a big spinning country. 70% of the world's cotton yarn was produced in the Roth Empire. Those landlords who controlled countless women weavers relied on this to accumulate a huge amount of wealth. Chapter 1439. After coming out of the factory, Meg rode his bicycle back to the restaurant. He changed into his chef's uniform and immediately began to prepare for the lunch service. He already had some plans for what the remaining 20,000 night elves were going to do in Chaos City. He could start preparing for the weaving factory that was connected to the spinning factory, and after the train was officially put into commercial use, he would definitely need to invest a lot of manpower to build the trains and tracks. He could set up a steam train processing factory with the hill and put in the 20,000 night elves labor force. Irina didn't come back during lunch. She should have gone to the north to continue escorting the elves as they retreated south. After lunch, Amy walked to Meg and softly asked, "Father, can you accompany me to a place tonight?" "Where?" Meg looked at Amy. "To Jessica's place. It's her birthday today. I want to bring an ice cream cake to her house to celebrate her birthday and give her a surprise." Amy whispered into Meg's ear mysteriously, "I only told you about this. So it's Jessica's birthday today." Realization dawned on Meg. He had a good impression of that beautiful, short-haired little girl. She was also one of Amy's good friends. Looking at Amy's expectant face, Meg pondered for a while before nodding. "All right, let's bring an ice cream cake tonight and give her a surprise." "Father, you're the best." Amy hugged Meg's neck and kissed his cheek hard. Then, she ran around the restaurant happily with her arms wide open. After that, she kicked Ugly Duckling, which pounced on her excitedly away. Meow. Ugly Duckling was stuck to the wall with a smack, and then slowly slid down along the wall. It looked at Amy aggrievedly. "Ugly Duckling, you can't blame me for this. I didn't even see you pounce on me." Amy shrugged innocently. Then, she disdainfully said, "However, I think you really need to lose weight. You're a little heavier than usual when I kick you." Meow. Ugly Duckling covered its eyes with its two little paws and then lay back down like a corpse. Although it was a bit sudden, as a father, he naturally had to do his best to satisfy his daughter's request. Therefore, before opening for business at noon, Meg wrote an announcement and posted it. "I'm playing with my daughter tonight. We're only open for business in the firepot area." The guests looked at the notice hanging on the door with strange expressions. Although there seems to be no problem, why do I feel that something is not quite right? That's little boss. You don't know anything and you don't dare to ask anything. Such a cute daughter. If it were me, why would I open a restaurant? What's wrong with playing with her every day? Although the customers were a little resentful, when they thought of the cute and obedient little boss, they couldn't say anything. "But I want to eat grilled fish." A weak voice sounded, but it was quickly ignored. In the afternoon, Meg personally ordered an ice cream cake for Jessica. The figurines in the middle were made to look like Jessica and her mother. Both of them had smiles on their faces. "I'm back." Amy pushed open the restaurant's door and put her little bag behind the counter. She immediately ran to the kitchen door and looked at Meg, who was packing the ice cream cake. She asked expectantly, "Father, is the ice cream cake ready?" "Here, it's already packed. We can go with it." Meg raised his hand to show the ice cream cake box in his hand. The pink box was tied with a big bow, and it was very cute. "I just saw it. It's a very cute ice cream cake," Mia chimed in with a smile. "Why don't you hold the birthday party in the restaurant? That way we can also eat the beautiful and delicious ice cream cake." Connie looked at the cake in Meg's hand with pity. "I'll make a cake for everyone tomorrow," Meg said with a smile. He carried the cake and left with Amy. There was already a long line in front of the restaurant. Everyone looked at Meg, who came out with the cake, with a slightly resentful expression. Especially the girls who couldn't eat the tofu pudding, they looked aggrieved. "Everyone, eat well. I'm going out to play with Father." Amy followed them out of the door and grabbed one of Meg's fingers. She raised her right hand and waved it at everyone with a smile. So cute. Everyone looked at Amy, who was wearing a little magician's robe and had two small ponytails on her head. When she smiled, two shallow dimples appeared on her face. Their eyes lit up, and the resentment they had for Meg instantly disappeared. That's right, such a cute little baby. What's wrong with taking some time out to play with her? Isn't this the right thing to do? As such, Mag was able to flag down a horse-drawn carriage very smoothly, and the two of them left together. I can see that Mr. Mac has already started to use Little Boss to act cute in order to avoid our blame. Harrison sighed. What else could they do? They could only eat hot pot tonight. The horse-drawn carriage stopped outside the miners' residential area. Meg paid the coachman, carried the cake, and got off the carriage with Amy. Did Amy prepare a gift for Jessica? Meg asked as he held Amy's hand and walked. Yes. Amy nodded and took out a slightly crudely wrapped gift box from her magic caster's staff. When Crassus and Julian made the magic caster's staff, they also designed a storage function. Hence, the magic caster's staff became Amy's big pocket. Then let's go. Meg looked at the gift box Amy was holding solemnly in her arms and smiled. He was also a little curious about what the little one had prepared for Jessica. The houses and streets in the miners' residential area had been renovated, and the environment and people had also been renovated. As they walked on the streets, they could finally see some smiles on the faces of the pedestrians. Meg and Amy stopped in front of a closed house. It's here, Amy said. She walked up and reached out to knock on the door lightly. After a while, a small hole opened in the door, and a bright eye flashed past the hole. Then, the door was quickly opened, and Jessica, who had a mushroom hairstyle, looked at Amy in surprise and said, Amy, why are you here? Happy birthday, Jessica. Amy walked up and hugged Jessica. She smiled and said, I remember that today is your birthday, so I brought Father here to celebrate your birthday. Happy birthday, Jessica. Meg smiled at Jessica, who was being hugged by Amy. Chapter 1440. Jessica looked at Amy and Meg with a happy smile on her face. She nodded and said, Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Uncle Meg. Mr. Meg, Amy, you're here. Rebecca walked to the door and was surprised to see Meg and Amy. She hurriedly said, It's cold outside. Please come in. Okay. Meg carried the cake into the house. Although the house was still simple after the renovation, there was at least an intact wooden table and 4 stools in the room. Meg gently placed the ice cream cake in his hand on the edge of the table. It looked like Rebecca and Jessica were eating dinner. There was still half a bowl of rice in it, and there were only 2 simple boiled vegetables on the table. Father made you an ice cream cake. Why don't we eat the cake first? Amy said as she held Jessica's hand. Okay. Jessica nodded and smiled. This is the first time I've celebrated a birthday with cake. I'm sorry to have made you spend so much money. Rebecca was cleaning up the table as she spoke with a slightly embarrassed expression. She had been constantly hearing rumors about Mamie Restaurant during this period of time. Regardless of whether it was the hundreds of people lining up every day or the fact that a single dish could easily cost several hundred copper coins, all of those things seemed so distant to her. Today was not a day off. Mr. Meg had brought a cake and accompanied Amy to celebrate Jessica's birthday. That kind of friendship and sincerity was not something a cake could compare to. Amy and Jessica are very good friends. I'm also surprised that she remembered her birthday. Of course I should celebrate with them, Meg said with a smile. He was indeed a little surprised by Amy's memory. After all, the little girl's mind was filled with food most of the time. He didn't expect her to remember her friend's birthday. Seeing that Rebecca had already cleaned up the table, Meg placed the ice cream cake in the middle of the table and opened the outer shell to reveal the cake inside. Wow, what a beautiful cake. Jessica looked at the exquisite cake, and her eyes lit up, especially when she saw the 2 figures on the cake. One was her, and the other was her mother. She was pleasantly surprised. She couldn't help but look at Meg and say, Uncle Meg is amazing. These 2 figures look like me and my mother. Yeah, it's just like the real thing. Rebecca looked at the 2 figures on the cake in amazement. According to our tradition, make a wish on the cake, then blow out the candles, and the wish may be granted. Meg lit up a circle of small candles and looked at Jessica with a smile. Will it really come true? Jessica closed her eyes devoutly when she heard this. After a while, she opened her eyes and blew out all the candles in one breath. "Jessica, what did you wish for?" Amy asked curiously. Jessica smiled and said, "My wish is, I hope that AI, me, and I can be best friends forever." "Silly, it won't come true if you say it out loud." AI me stroked Jessica's head with a doting smile and said, "However, I can't fulfill this wish for you. Of course, we'll be best friends forever." "Okay." A happy smile appeared on Jessica's face. "By the way, I want to give you the gift I prepared." Amy took out the gift she had prepared and handed it to Jessica. Jessica took the gift box, and under Amy's urging, she opened the box and revealed the golden conch inside. "Wow, it's so beautiful. Is this a conch you picked up from the beach?" Jessica's eyes lit up, and she happily picked up the golden conch that was as big as two of her hands. The brilliant golden color covered the entire conch, and it seemed to glow. Amy nodded and said, "Yes, this is the most beautiful conch I found at the beach. Put it next to your ear, and you can hear the sound of the sea." "It's true. I can hear the sound of the sea." Jessica put her ear close to the mouth of the conch and looked at Amy in surprise. "I like this gift. I love the sea." "Thank you, Amy. You're welcome. If Jessica likes it, I'm also very happy," Amy said with a smile. She also put her ear to the conch and giggled. Meg looked at this scene with a smile. The friendship between the two little ones had been established under very difficult conditions. If it could continue to be good, then it would indeed be very beautiful. After removing the candles, Jessica and Amy cut open the ice cream cake together. The two little ones ate the cake happily and talked about happy things that belong to children. Rebecca silently looked at Jessica, who was full of smiles, and her eyes were slightly red. "Mrs. Rebecca, are you used to working in Suede?" Meg asked with a smile. "Yes, Miss Gloria is a very kind boss. Working in Suede is the happiest job I've had so far." Rebecca nodded. Meg looked at her unconsciously overflowing smile and could tell that she really did like this job. After staying at Jessica's house for nearly 2 hours and waiting for the two little ones to have fun, Meg finally left with Amy. "Father, I'm so happy today," Amy said happily as she lay on Meg's back. "Then Father will accompany you to play more often in the future, okay?" Meg also said with a smile. Carrying Amy on his back, they walked out onto the main street. It wasn't easy to see a carriage on the road. "Okay." Amy's eyes lit up, but she thought for a moment and shook her head. "No, if that's the case, the uncles and aunties who come to eat will definitely be very sad. If I monopolize Father, then they won't be able to eat delicious food. It's okay. Father will strive to spend more time with Amy in the future." Meg felt a little guilty. With the restaurant and all sorts of other things combined, he was always so busy. He really didn't have enough time to accompany Amy. "It's okay. As long as I can eat Father's delicious food every day, Amy will be super happy," Amy whispered, her voice full of satisfaction. Meg continued to walk forward with Amy on his back. They walked past several intersections, but they still didn't see a carriage. "Help! Help!" At this moment, a shrill and frightened female voice suddenly came from an alley to the side. "Father, it seems like there's a bad guy bullying a big sister over there." Amy straightened her body, looked around, and pointed to the alley on the right. "Then let's go take a look." Meg also confirmed the direction of the voice. It was the dark alley on the right, and he quickly walked toward it. The hurried and frightened female voice went in a direction far away from them, as if she was running away, but also as if she had been kidnapped. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 1441. This way. Meg strained his ears to listen carefully as he sped through the alleys. Judging from the terrified scream, it was probably a young girl who had been frightened. To scream at this time in the slums of the northern part of the city, there was a high chance that she was in danger. Meg moved very quickly and stopped at the intersection of an alley. Although he hadn't seen anyone yet, the scream was very close, so the person should be nearby. "No, don't come over. Please don't come over." A terrified female voice came from the side. "I think it's behind here." Amy had already taken out her Magicaster's staff and excitedly pointed to the alley on the right. Yes, it's in this direction. Meg nodded and put Amy on the ground, then walked quickly into the alley with light footsteps. At this moment, a petite black shadow suddenly flitted silently over the high wall to the side. It flashed past Meg and jumped down the high wall like a kitten. A terrified male voice came from the other end of the alley, followed by the crisp sound of a sharp weapon hitting the wall. However, the sound of fighting suddenly stopped, followed by a dull thud on the ground, accompanied by a terrified scream. Ah! Meg turned into the alley with Amy and saw a tall beast man lying on the ground with his pants half off. He was holding his gurgling throat with his hand, and his eyes were wide open. He was no longer breathing. The fatal wound was the wound on his heart. It was a very clean and professional killing method. Although the beastman reacted, he still couldn't put up any effective resistance. And in the corner, a young girl in disheveled clothes was curled up in a corner, trembling. The petite figure had her back to Meg and the others, and a few drops of blood dripped from the sharp claws in her fist. She looked at the girl a little embarrassedly and comforted. "Are you okay? The bad guy is dead. I should be the good guy." The girl was stunned when she heard this. She looked up at her, and her fear was reduced by half. Meg looked at the familiar figure in black clothes and the pinkish-white beast ears, a little surprised. "Sister Connie, why are you here? Did you get lost again?" Amy asked with a surprised expression. "Boss, Xiaomi, why are you here?" The petite female orc turned around and looked at Meg and Amy with an even more surprised expression. She said awkwardly, I just came out for a walk. I'm not lost." "Really?" I almost believed him. "We passed by here on our way home," Amy said, then glanced at the orc on the ground. "But the bad guys were all killed by you, so we won't have any bad guys to fight. What a pity." We were passing by the alley outside and heard the girl's screams, so we chased after her. Meg said. He took off his coat and walked up to the human girl curled up in the corner. The girl looked to be about 13 or 14 years old. Her clothes had been violently torn, and there was a red handprint on her pale face. He gently covered her with his coat and said softly, "Little girl, you don't have to be afraid. I'm Meg, the owner of Mamis. This is my daughter, Amy. The girl who saved you is an employee of our restaurant. Let's take her home." The warm coat immediately drove away the cold and the embarrassment caused by her torn clothes. The girl looked up at Meg. This uncle's smile looked so gentle, and there was also a cute little angel-like girl beside him. The fear in her heart was greatly reduced. Also, Mamis? Wasn't it the super famous restaurant? Was this uncle the owner of those restaurants? Yes. The girl slowly stood up with the help of the wall. She reached out and grabbed her collar. Her pale face was still filled with fear, and her eyes avoided the orc corpse lying on the ground. "Let's go. Let's leave this place first." Meg turned sideways to shield the girl from the corpse on the ground. With the help of the gentle light from Amy's Magicaster's staff, he led the girl to the street outside. Connie kept her claws and quickly caught up with Meg and the rest, afraid that she would fall behind. "What's your name? Where do you live?" Meg asked gently as he walked to the girl's right. The girl pointed ahead and softly said, "Kelly, I live in front. We'll reach it after turning 3 alleys." "All right, you don't have to be afraid. That bastard deserved to die. We'll send you to your door." Meg looked at the girl who was still trembling slightly and felt a little upset. Even in Chaos City, there were still girls who faced all kinds of illegal acts. I shouldn't have gone out at night. I only wanted to buy a candy for my little brother," Kelly said with a sobbing voice. "Kelly, it's not your fault. It's those scumbags who use the darkness to do evil." Meg stopped in his tracks and looked into Kelly's eyes. "It's your freedom to go out at night. It's not a reason for those scumbags to hurt you." Kelly looked into Meg's eyes. She was a little lost, but also a little touched. She had never heard anyone talk to her like that. It was just like the teachings she had always heard. Wrap yourself up tightly and don't go out at night. It was as if all the crimes were because they wore skirts that exposed their calves, or because they didn't return home before the sky turned dark. Yes, skirts are so pretty. Why can't you wear them? The stars at night are so beautiful. You won't be able to see them if you stay at home. Amy nodded in agreement. As for the bad guys, just kill them all. Kelly looked at Amy's confident look and couldn't help feeling envious. She didn't even have such courage. But there seemed to be quite a lot of scumbags like that here. I've already met many of them these past few days, Connie interrupted. Kelly was silent. Living in the slums, she often heard the unfortunate stories of girls. A weak girl like her had no ability to fight back when faced with invaders from other races. Don't worry, this situation will definitely change. Let the girls wear skirts and go out at ease and see the beautiful night sky and stars. Meg said with a smile. He already had some ideas in his mind. Since the city lord's castle couldn't manage the safety of the slums at night, then it was up to him to do something. He sent Kelly to the door. Just as she was about to knock, the door was opened. A 2 to 3-year-old boy wobbled into Kelly's arms and called her sister in a childish voice. Here, have some candy. Kelly loosened her clenched fist and passed a very ordinary cane candy to the little boy. Candy. The little boy happily grabbed the candy and licked it. Kelly, what's wrong? Who are they? A middle-aged woman and a middle-aged man quickly walked out of the room. Seeing Kelly in a coat, with messy hair and a red handprint on her face, they quickly shielded her behind them and stood in front of Meg and the others. Chapter 1442. Mother, this is the boss of Mamie's. I met some bad guys on the road just now, and they saved me, Kelly hurriedly explained. Why did you sneak out without telling us? If your brother wanted to eat candy, he could have bought it tomorrow. The middle-aged woman looked at Kelly's swollen face with reddened eyes and said with a pained expression, If anything happened to you, what would your father and I do? That man turned around and came out with a kitchen knife. He looked at Kelly with a red face and said, Where's that bastard? How dare he bully my daughter? I'm going to fight him to the death. The bad guy is already dead, Amy said. The man and woman were stunned. They looked at Meg and the rest differently. Thank you very much for saving Kelly. Please come in and have a seat. The woman hurriedly bowed to Meg and the rest and thanked them gratefully. I'll go and buy some wine. The man kept the kitchen knife behind him and scratched his head. It's all right. We just happened to meet him when we were passing by and did something that we should do. Meg shook his head with a smile and then said that guy deserved it. You don't have to be afraid. However, since someone is dead, the Great Temple and the City Lord's Castle will definitely investigate. If they find you, tell them to look for me directly at Mamie's. Meg declined Kelly's family's warm invitation. After Kelly went into the house to change her clothes, he took back his coat and left with Amy and Connie. Meg looked at Connie, who was dressed in black, and asked curiously, Are you out for actual combat training? Connie nodded proudly and said, Yes. Master said that it's meaningless for me to continue training in the Batai prison, so he asked me to come to the north of the city to find some scumbags for actual combat training. Including the one today, I've already killed 10 scumbags who hurt girls. I see. Meg was a little surprised by Rex's training method, but it was indeed a good method to get rid of evil while training. Big Sister Connie, you're really awesome. Amy gave her a thumbs up and then eagerly said, Can you bring me along next time? I'm also super fierce when it comes to beating up bad guys. Well, Connie was a little hesitant. She looked at Amy and said, Although I want to bring Amy along, I'm running on the wall. I'm afraid that you can't catch up. It's okay. You can run on the wall, but I can fly. Amy opened her arms. Connie looked at Amy, who was hovering in the air with her wings in surprise and envy. She nodded and said, If that's the case, then there's no problem at all. Little Amy, come down. Mag waved at Amy. Amy kept her wings and landed in Meg's arms. He hugged her. You can't use your wings so casually, Meg whispered. He looked around cautiously. Amy's wings were a gift from the Pope. Although the church didn't have much influence in the Roth Empire, such a supernatural gift seemed to come from another level. Hence, he didn't want Amy to show off her wings in front of others for the time being. Oh, Amy shrugged. She was a little disappointed. However, she quickly looked at Connie and said, But I still have my wind fire wheels. Although it's a little conspicuous at night, I can still keep up with big sister Connie's speed. All right, let's do it together tomorrow. Connie nodded with a smile. Meg looked helplessly at the two people who had agreed to beat up the bad guys. He didn't want to stop such a positive agreement. He walked to the main street and said to Connie, "Are you coming back with us, or are you going to continue with your trial? It's too early now. I'm not sleepy at all. Also, this is the peak time for those scumbags to appear. I plan to guard this area for a while longer. Boss, you can go back first." Connie shook her head. She jumped onto a high wall at the side with a light leap. She waved at Meg and the others, and quickly disappeared into the night. Amy's eyes followed Connie into the distance. She opened her mouth to say something. "You want to go back and sleep. You still have class tomorrow." Meg continued walking with Amy in his arms. Not long after, Meg hailed a horse-drawn carriage. He took the carriage back to the restaurant and happened to run into Irina, who had just returned from outside. "Mother." Amy let go of Meg's hand and jumped into Irina's arms. Irina carried Amy and then looked at Meg and said, "I'm hungry." "I'm hungry too." Amy raised her little hand. "All right, I'll go and make supper for you now." Meg opened the restaurant's door with a smile. He poured 2 cups of warm water for them and then went into the kitchen to get busy. Amy snuggled in Irina's arms and told her about going to celebrate Jessica's birthday that night and how they met the bad guys. "Oh, so there's so many bad guys in Chaos City. That's interesting." Irina's eyes lit up after hearing Amy's story. "Mother, are we going to team up and beat up the bad guys?" Amy asked eagerly. Irina nodded and said, "Sure. Why don't we get everyone in the restaurant to go and beat up the bad guys together? Take it as a rehearsal." That's not a bad suggestion. Why didn't he think of such a constructive idea? After pondering for a while, he said, "If that's the case, do we need a uniform and a cool team name?" Mag nodded as he poked his head out of the kitchen. Why didn't he think of such a constructive idea? Isn't it just beating up a bad guy? Do we need to make it so exaggerated? Irina smiled contemptuously and then said, "Why don't we call ourselves the Heresy Trial Union? FFF Society?" Meg raised his eyebrows. "Then do we still need to prepare the black robe and the Grim Reaper's scythe?" Irina thought for a while and then nodded. "That sounds pretty good. What about the slogan? Burn that heretic to death." Amy raised the torch. "Huh, that sounds pretty good." Irina's eyes lit up. "Then, should we capture all the bad guys and burn them to death? That way, they won't dare to hurt innocent big sisters." Amy nodded. Meg smiled and went back to the kitchen to continue cooking. Armed deterrence was the biggest deterrent to the bad guys. When necessary, they should teach them a lesson. The next morning, the people from the Grey Temple came. "Mr. Meg, an orc died in the north of the city yesterday. According to our investigation, you and your employees might be involved. We hope you can cooperate with our investigation," a young Grey Temple inspector said to Meg, who opened the door. Chapter 1443. Meg looked at the 2 young inspectors from the Grey Temple. They weren't aggressive, and he glanced at the customers lining up outside. He didn't want others to know about Connie's incident for the time being, so he stepped aside and said, "Please come in and talk." "All right." The 2 inspectors nodded and walked into the restaurant. Meg closed the door behind him and looked at the 2 young inspectors, hesitating about what to say. "Mr. Meg, we already know the details of the incident. That orc yesterday was a criminal we were pursuing, and he was responsible for 7 lives. He was in the process of assaulting a young girl last night, and he was killed by someone who tried to stop him. The person who killed him should be an employee of your restaurant. You were also at the scene last night, right?" The inspector who spoke earlier asked Meg. Meg raised his eyebrows slightly. It sounded like they were telling him that the orc deserved to die and that they were doing the people a favor. He nodded with a smile and said, "Yes. The 3 of us were on our way to the north of the city to celebrate the birthday of my daughter's friend. We heard cries for help on our way back, so we rushed to the scene of the crime. The orc was very vicious, and that employee had no choice but to kill him to protect the young girl. Thank you for standing up to protect the residents of Chaos City. There have been many good deeds of chivalry in the north of the city recently, and I'm sure it has something to do with that employee of your restaurant. Can we meet her? The annual Top 10 Citizen Selection event is about to begin. Perhaps we can apply for a spot for her. The inspector continued. Meg raised his eyebrows slightly and sighed. She's a shy girl and has a phobia of attention. The Top 10 Citizen Selection might not be suitable for her. She doesn't even want to show her face. If you think she's doing the right thing, then let her continue to do it. But she has some problems here. Meg pointed at his head and said regretfully, "She's such a good girl. She's so young and should have had a beautiful youth. If she suddenly receives too much attention, I'm afraid her condition will worsen, or even..." The two inspectors looked at each other, hesitated for a while, and said, "All right, since that's the case, we won't force it. Please thank her on our behalf, Mr. Meg. If you need anything, please inform the Grey Temple immediately." "All right, please take care." Meg nodded and sent the two inspectors away. "Father, what's wrong with Big Sister Connie's head?" Amy, who had been watching from the side, asked curiously. "Senile dementia came early," Mag said with a sigh. He couldn't help laughing too. Even though Meg had expected that the matter with the Grey Temple would be resolved smoothly, it was clear that the Grey Temple approved of the residents' efforts to stop the violence. After the morning business hours, Meg took a letter of authorization and rode his bicycle to the Mercenary Guild. He walked straight into the guild hall and arrived at the mission area. The staff behind the counter were all busy, and there were many people who were seriously filling in the form of missions. Meg queued up in front of the counter, and the staff behind the counter handed him a form without even looking up. "Sir, please fill in the form first when you want to issue a mission. Choose the type of mission you want to issue, the specific requirements, the mission time, and the specific reward." "All right." Meg took a pen and sat down in front of the counter and began to fill in the form. After about 5 minutes, Meg handed the form over and said, "I'm done. Please take a look and see if there's anything else you need to add." The young staff took a look at the words on the form, and her eyes lit up. It was the first time she had seen such beautiful handwriting in the 3 years she had worked here. However, after looking at the form carefully, she couldn't help but let out a soft gasp of surprise and then looked up at Meg. "Is there a problem?" Meg asked with a smile. "No. Are you sure this is what you want to commission?" the staff asked, and her voice was a little unnatural. It was the first time she had encountered such a commission. "Yes, I want to start a gentleman's alliance and commission all the mercenaries and residents who are full of gentlemanly spirit to protect all the people who need to be protected after nightfall and work hard to eliminate the thugs who use the night and dark areas to harm the weak, and I'm willing to pay a certain amount of reward as a reward." Meg nodded with a smile. "Is this not in accordance with the regulations?" Hearing Meg's words, many people who were filling in the form around him looked at him in surprise. Such a commission was really unexpected. "It's the first time I've encountered such a commission. Please wait a moment. I need to ask my leader." The staff was also a little hesitant and said to Meg before getting up and leaving quickly. Not long after, the staff came back with a tall and thin middle-aged man. "Mr. Mack, I didn't expect it to really be you." That tall and thin man smiled when he saw Meg. "I didn't expect you to be from the Mercenary Union." Meg also smiled at that middle-aged man. Cartera was considered a regular in the restaurant and would come back for a meal every few days. His favorite dishes were beggar's chicken and beef kebabs. "I heard you want to set up a gentleman's alliance and work hard to eliminate the thugs?" Cartera asked Meg. "Yes. I encountered a case of sexual assault against a young girl on the way here yesterday. Such a thing happened in Chaos City, and it touched me greatly. I hope Chaos City can become better. Even if it's a dark night where the sun can't shine, even if it's a poor slum, the ordinary residents at the bottom can still obtain a sufficient sense of security, respect, and protection." Meg nodded solemnly. Katla's smile gradually disappeared, and his expression became serious. "A man who has such thoughts is too awesome, isn't it?" The female staff, standing at the side, looked at Meg with a completely different gaze. She couldn't help but admire him. Meanwhile, the people who were filling in the forms at the side gradually put down the pens in their hands and looked at Meg thoughtfully. "Of course, I'm willing to pay for this. As long as the members of the Gentleman's Alliance use a photo stone to record the images of punishing the bad guys and get it verified by the Great Temple to confirm the truth of the incident and the identity of the bad guys, I've set up 10 levels of rewards according to the level of the incident, and you'll get the corresponding reward, as well as the corresponding gentleman points on the Gentleman's Leaderboard. Today, I'll inject 5 million copper coins as the startup capital for the Gentleman's Alliance, Meg said with a smile. Chapter 1444. Meg walked out of the Mercenary Union's gate and kept the certificate in his hand before pushing his bicycle away with a smile. The commission was handled very smoothly. When he left, the Gentlemen's League's commission had already lit up at the top of the commission wall. It was pinned to the top manually and caused quite a commotion in the mission distribution area. Mag didn't know what kind of impact his actions would have on Chaos City, but as a member of this city, he had to do what he could do at the moment. He made the Gentlemen's League's funding open, which meant that if anyone wanted to support this project, they could also invest in it. The most important thing now was how many residents would respond and join the Gentlemen's League. Judging from the commotion just now, it shouldn't be that no one would take action. The Gentlemen's League. Michael paced around the meeting room with a frown. An official from the City Lord's castle chuckled and said, "This Mr. Meg is really interesting." He actually thought of using mercenary missions to protect the residents in Tada. Interesting? Michael looked at that official with a serious expression and said, "I don't think this is funny. It's a form of punishment. The order and rules that we are so proud of are not able to protect the safety of the residents at the bottom. Instead, we need another resident to use mercenary missions to maintain the order. Isn't this our dereliction of duty?" That official quickly kept his smile and sat up straight with his head lowered. The atmosphere in the meeting room also became a little tense. All the officials looked very serious. City Lord, the Great Temple, and the City Lord's castle have limited manpower. The patrols are already at their limit, but we can't cover every place. The bad guys are always able to find some loopholes. This is our dereliction of duty, but I'm afraid it will be very difficult to make up for it in a short period of time, an official answered. Michael nodded and said, "I'm aware of this as well. We've already done our best with the patrolmen. The lack of manpower is a serious problem. You guys start recruiting more patrolmen to ensure that we can cover all regions." City Lord, should we stop the Gentlemen's League? This might have a certain impact on Chaos City's current system, an official said worriedly. This is a good thing to protect the residents and punish the criminals. Why should we stop it? Shouldn't we support and encourage them? Michael shook his head with a smile on his face. If ordinary people can join the team to stop crime and violence, we won't have to worry about manpower. Have you heard? A Gentleman's Alliance has appeared in the Mercenary Guild today. As long as you join the Gentleman's Alliance, stop and punish violent criminals, and protect ordinary people, you'll be able to receive a certain amount of rewards. I saw it in the guild this morning. Not only is there a reward, but there are also gentleman points. It's said that the Gentleman Alliance has a gentleman points ranking. You can earn points according to the missions you complete and leave your name on the gentleman points ranking. I didn't expect that there would be so many bastards around us. My blood is boiling. Tonight, I've decided to go to the north of the city and wait. If I meet any of those scumbags, I'll beat their heads to a crooked angle. I don't want the prize money, but I've decided to add another 100,000 copper coins to the bet so that more people can beat this bastard together. Brother, count me in. Bring me along. I want to beat up that bastard too. At the entrance of Amy's in the afternoon, there was a temporary harmony between the sweet and savory parties. The most talked about was the news about the Gentleman's Alliance that had spread like wildfire. Because that bounty mission had been pinned at the top of the Mercenary Guild ever since it was released, almost all the mercenaries who went to the Mercenary Guild today knew about it, and it quickly spread outside the Mercenary Guild. The atmosphere of order and equality in Chaos City was very different from other places in this world. However, very few people would pay attention to how the people living in the slums in the north of the city lived and what kind of predicament they faced. Many people didn't even know that there was a group of people living below the poverty line in this city. They lived without dignity and had to go through all kinds of dangers and pain. Hence, when all this happened in front of them, it gave them a huge impact and a great deal of indignation. The customers outside are all very excited. They seem to be talking about something about the Gentleman's Alliance. I heard that someone posted a mission at the Mercenary Guild to subdue the criminals with a reward. Mia came in from outside and agitatedly said, "This is really a good thing. If everyone is willing to participate, then the criminals will be hated by everyone, and they won't be able to stay in Chaos City anymore." Yes, I think it's pretty good too. We can earn money from beating up the bad guys. That will be a great feeling. Barbara nodded in agreement. I wonder who came up with such a good idea. Raina was even more agitated. As a girl who grew up in the slums, she knew how scary the night was to them. However, if everyone was willing to help them, then everything would be different. Ahem, I'm the one who did it, Meg said proudly as he cleared his throat at the entrance of the kitchen. Everyone looked at Meg when they heard that. Boss, did you really do it? Mia looked at Meg in shock. Yes. On the way back last night, Amy, Connie, and I met a young girl who was almost hurt. Such things often happen in the darkness in the north of the city. Since the City Lord's castle and the Great Temple can't solve this problem for the time being, I wanted to do something. Meg nodded with a smile and said to everyone, "Of course. I discussed it with Princess Irina yesterday, and we think this could be a training ground for our restaurant before we go to the Orcs' territory to hone our teamwork skills." Boss is really a good person. Raina thought to herself, this is really good news for a girl living in the slums. In this case, there's not enough to go around. Connie murmured, although the north of the city was so big that she couldn't cover it completely, she still felt as if the cake that originally belonged to her had been cut up. Oh yes, our restaurant has been invited to the Aiden Chamber of Commerce's year-end banquet tonight. We'll be closed for the night. Is everyone willing to go? Meg asked. I'll go alone. Camilla raised her hand. She didn't want to go to the banquet as Amy's employee. If that happened, she wouldn't be able to survive in the circle anymore. She would probably end up worse than her Uncle Dracula. Can I wear a helmet? Connie raised her hand. She was looking forward to it. She hadn't participated in any interesting activities ever since she came to Chaos City. She went in and out of the restaurant every day with a helmet. If you think it's okay, you can go. Meg nodded. Chapter 1445. We'll stop business for tonight and support the Gentleman's League. Before the lunch service started, Meg hung a plaque at the door. It made the customers sigh again. Mr. Mack, don't tell me we can't even eat hot pot tonight. Vanessa looked at Meg pitifully. Yes, the restaurant is completely closed for tonight. Meg nodded with a smile. He had no choice. He had already promised to go to the Aiden Chamber of Commerce's mid-year meeting. He couldn't possibly leave Raina alone in the restaurant to cook hot pot while everyone went to have fun. Even Mamies has joined the Gentleman's League. It seems like we have to go and do something tonight. The customers lamented that the restaurant wouldn't be open for business tonight, and their interest in the Gentleman's League increased. Many customers were already itching to try it out. After the busy lunch service ended, Meg smiled at the ladies and said, "If you don't have suitable clothes for tonight's banquet, you can go to Sway to take a look. Just say that you're Mamie's employees and put whatever clothes you buy under my name. I'll pay for it later. Take it as a small gift for everyone's hard work during this period." Buy new clothes? The lady's eyes lit up. Meg nodded with a smile. Yes, there is still more than 4 hours before the banquet. You could do whatever you want. Gather at the restaurant around 5 p.m. and we'll set off together. Thank you, boss, the ladies said happily. They bade farewell to Meg before leaving together. Even Anna was brought away. Judging by the time, the elves going south should have reached Chaos City by now, right? Meg went upstairs to the study. Irina had already discussed the matter of settling the night elves with City Lord Michael, so he didn't have to get too involved to avoid being noticed. As for the matter of setting up the factory, Meg planned to talk to Hill if he could meet her tonight. After all, he had given her the authorization to use the steam engine. If Hill cooperated with him, it would be much easier for him to raise funds and promote his products in the future. If there was money to be made, everyone would earn it. Mag was very clear about that. As an unqualified businessman, he didn't want to do everything himself. It would be best if he could lie down and collect money. As for the night elves, the sudden influx of 20,000 laborers into Chaos City was naturally the best choice for the new factory. Moraton Manor. Cyril, that bastard. How dare he mix with Bowen and Harvey? He's simply inviting a wolf into the house. Jeffrey smashed the cup in his hand and said angrily. His chest was heaving up and down because of his anger. Secretary General Menard lowered his head slightly. After a while, Jeffrey's anger gradually subsided. He looked up at Menard and asked, "How many directors support Gloria now?" If the directors from a Marquis and Dodge's family support young Master Cyril, excluding the directors from the Buffett family, there shouldn't be more than 10 directors who support Miss Gloria, Menard answered. The Aiden Chamber of Commerce has a total of 68 directors. Jeffrey frowned with a hint of worry. Menard suggested, "Master, do we need to gather all the directors and express your position to them? After all, Miss Gloria has just entered their sights. They might be biased and don't understand her. There's no need for that. It would just be a joke." Jeffrey shook his head, and his expression calmed down. If she can't even get past this, she can't take on the family Moraton. Yes. Menard nodded. In the moving carriage, the secretary looked at Hill, who was resting with her eyes closed, and said, "Miss, according to your request, the 21 directors under the Buffett family have all agreed to vote for Gloria tonight. How many votes does she have now?" Hill didn't open her eyes and asked casually. "According to the news, the Marquis and Dodge's families have already allied with Cyril. They have at least 30 stable votes in their hands. With Cyril's many years of operations in Family Moraton and his special identity as the successor, he should be able to get more votes than Gloria. As for the remaining independent directors, we don't know what they want yet. The number of confirmed votes in Gloria's hands should be around 25, the secretary answered quickly. The corners of Hill's mouth curled up slightly, revealing a mocking smile. "Speaking of which, shouldn't I support Cyril? With his foolish act of joining forces with Bowen and Harvey, as long as he accepts the family Moraton, I don't have to do anything. He can squander all of family Moraton on his own." In the evening, Irina returned to the dining room. "I've arranged for all of them to go to the factory," Irina said as she ate the beggar's chicken that Meg made for her. "What about the accommodation for the night?" "There aren't enough rooms for now," Meg asked. "I asked them to bring back some wood on the way here. They're building a house now. We're elves, the race that understands the wood element the most. When it comes to building wooden houses, even the dwarves aren't as good as us," Irina said confidently. "All right," Meg nodded. Since he didn't need to worry, he wouldn't ask too much. He said, "There's a banquet tonight at the Aiden Chamber of Commerce. Everyone in the dining room will be attending. Do you want to go? Are you in charge of cooking?" "No, I'm considered an invited guest. I don't have to cook." "Then what's the point of going? The food made by the other chefs is so bad." Irina shook her head and took a bite of the drumstick. "I'm going to the factory tonight to make arrangements for them." "Okay." Meg nodded. The matter of the night elves was indeed more urgent. This banquet was just a matter of whether or not they could attend. After filling her stomach, Irina left immediately. She had a lot of things to do in order to make arrangements for the 20,000 elves. Meg took a look at the time and went upstairs to change into a casual black suit. Considering that the temperature outside was a little low, he put on a gray coat over it. Meg had just gone downstairs when there was a knock on the door. Meg opened the door. A group of beautiful girls wrapped in down jackets of various colors stood at the entrance of the dining room and looked at him with smiles. "Boss, look at our new clothes. The clothes from Suede are so nice. They're warm and as light as a feather. They're so comfortable," Yabamiya said happily. Meg looked at the girls wearing down jackets and smiling like flowers. He didn't know what to say for a moment. Although blue Suede's down jackets were very fashionable, and they were indeed light and comfortable to wear, but they were going to attend a banquet after all. Wouldn't it be a little strange for everyone to wear down jackets? "Yeah, it's too warm. It's all foggy. I can't even see." Connie, who was following behind them, faced a tree and said seriously, "Boss, can I take off my helmet?" Chapter 1446. No, you have to bring your helmet and brain with you. Meg walked over and turned on the fog removal mode for her. Connie's eyes lit up as she looked at the big tree in front of her. She smiled awkwardly and said, "All right, then I'll bring my helmet and brain to the banquet." Meg looked at all the girls in down jackets and still felt a little strange. However, it didn't seem realistic for them to change into gorgeous banquet attire at this time. "I'm back." Amy's voice rang out from behind everyone. Everyone turned around and saw Amy in her magician robe jumping over. The two ponytails on her head swayed slightly, and she looked very cute. Wow, everyone is wearing beautiful new clothes. Amy looked at everyone, and her eyes lit up. Then, she turned to look at Meg. "Father, do I have new clothes? I want to wear the same clothes as everyone." "All right, then let's go in and change." Meg looked at the expectant Amy and nodded with a smile. He had prepared a beautiful little dress for Amy, but now it seemed that the little dress wasn't as attractive as the down jacket. Since everyone was wearing down jackets, then he might as well let Amy wear a down jacket and attend the banquet. Moreover, this was a new product from Suede, after all. In this world, it was probably quite trendy, right? After a while, Amy, who had changed into a short purple-blue down jacket, skipped out and joined the group of down jackets. The light, round, and white rabbit ear muffs made her look very cute. "Let's go, we should set off." Meg raised his hand to look at his watch. It was almost 5 o'clock, and the 3 carriages that they had booked in advance were already waiting at the door. Everyone got on. "Father, where's big sister Irina? Isn't she going to the banquet?" Amy asked Meg as she got on the same carriage as Meg. "She's probably very busy. After all, she has to be responsible for so many night elves." Meg smiled and shook his head. "All right." Amy was a little disappointed. Other than Irina, Shirley didn't come either. That day in the Wind Forest, he saw with his own eyes how Blower's father, Vincent by Billy, severed one of Elliot's arms before being killed by all of the elves. However, Meg didn't see Blower on the battlefield that day, so he wasn't able to bring him back. Anna's expression was also a bit serious. She used her small hand to support her chin and lifted the curtain a very small crack. She looked out of the window, thinking about something. "Anna, don't worry. Shirley will come back. Just like usual, he will remember his promise with you." Meg reached out and gently placed his hand on Anna's head. The little girl had a sensitive heart that did not match her age. "Okay," Anna replied softly, but her expression didn't lighten up because of Meg's consolation. Amy stuffed Ugly Duckling into Anna's arms with a smile and said, "Big sister Anna, you can pinch Ugly Duckling for a while. When you're unhappy, you can pinch its soft face and it will become better. Meow?" Ugly Duckling was confused. Why would she pinch it when she was unhappy? Anna reached out and cupped Ugly Duckling's soft, chubby face. It was warm in her palms. She pinched it with both hands at the same time, and the round face slowly became flat. Then, she pinched it again, and it changed into another shape. So cute. A smile appeared on Anna's face. It was as if she was holding a warm flask. Furthermore, it was so soft and comfortable to the touch. Ugly Duckling stared with its big, innocent blue eyes. It was intimidated by Amy's pressure and could only let Anna play with it. Meg looked at Anna, whose smile gradually brightened up because she was stroking the cat, and a smile also appeared on his face. Children indeed knew what children liked better. The square in front of the Aiden's Guild building was already filled with all kinds of luxurious horse-drawn carriages. Almost all the members of the Aiden Chamber of Commerce had gathered for today's year-end celebration. All the leaders and big shots in Chaos City's business world had gathered. Cyril, who was wearing a luxurious red and black robe and a green hat with a huge red gemstone on his head, stood at the entrance of the hall and greeted the merchants who were entering. However, those who could make Cyril take the initiative to greet were mostly the directors of the Aiden Chamber of Commerce. As for the normal merchants, they all tried to get to know Cyril with a smile when they saw him. However, most of them were ignored by Cyril with his nostrils. Cyril couldn't hide the smile on his face. As long as he removed Gloria from her position as a director today, he would be the only successor of Family Moraton. Furthermore, Frank had also promised that when he became the head of Family Moreton, he would help Harvey become the president of the Aden Chamber of Commerce. With the three families working together, Cyril was completely confident that he could remove Gloria from her position. As for the Buffett family, he didn't think that Gloria could persuade that woman on the hill to stand on her side. When he became the head of the family in the future, he would find a reason to take back the Suede. He heard that Gloria had expanded the factory again. It had only been 2 to 3 months, but she was already making over $1 million a month just by selling clothes. Everyone could see the future potential of this store. Although this was nothing compared to Family Moreton's wealth, he just didn't want his family to be able to live a good life after leaving Family Moreton. The slums in the north of the city were the best place for their family to return to. Director Donsel. Cyril reached out to shake hands with a bald, middle-aged man with a smile. After exchanging some pleasantries, they exchanged a knowing look. After Cyril and Donsel finished exchanging pleasantries, he saw Meg walking past him with a group of beautiful women. Why is this guy here again? Cyril frowned. During the last mid-year meeting, it was this guy who embarrassed him and was with Gloria. He didn't expect him to be here again today. He remembered that he didn't join the Aden Chamber of Commerce and once claimed that he wanted to overthrow the Aden Chamber of Commerce. Wow, those girls are so beautiful. Their clothes are so special too. They look so cool. If I'm not wrong, the clothes they're wearing are Suede's new clothes that haven't been officially released yet, right? I think they're called down jackets. Oh my God, they actually got the pre-sale money. Didn't they not start selling it yet? Could they be Suede's staff? The effect on the upper body is simply amazing. It feels super light, but it also looks very warm. The women's attention was attracted by the down jackets Yabamiya and the others were wearing. Many of them were Suede's loyal fans. During this period of time, they had been eyeing Suede's new winter clothes that would be released in 3 days. They didn't expect that there would be people wearing them to today's banquet, and a group of beautiful girls at that. Chapter 1447. Everyone in Amy's group felt a little uncomfortable under the gazes directed at them. Is the makeup on my face smudged? Why are so many people staring at me? Yabamiya whispered to Elizabeth with a blush on her face. Elizabeth took a serious look at her face and said calmly, "No, it's fine." Jane hid in the crowd with her head slightly lowered. The feeling of being stared at by so many people was too scary for her, and she just wanted to hide. Barbara was very calm. She was already used to the feeling of being the center of attention, and this was just a small scene. Meg walked at the very front with a cute little lowly in his left hand and another cute little lowly in his right. 8 beautiful young women followed behind him, and his trench coat fluttered in the wind. He exuded the aura of a winner in life. The waiter took Meg's invitation and checked it carefully. He glanced at the beautiful young women behind Meg and said hesitantly, "Sir, the invitation is correct, but according to the rules, only family members are allowed to attend the banquet. You have brought so many people." "Yes, they're all family members." "Is there a rule that says there can't be more than a few family members?" Meg said with a smile. The waiter and the surrounding men all drew in a cold breath. They looked at Meg with a different expression, attracting the envious and jealous gazes of the crowd. What a beast! The men looked at the group of beautiful young women. There was a pure elf girl, a half-dragon girl full of vitality, a cold and mature dragon girl, and a sexy mermaid girl. They couldn't help but lament in their hearts. Mia and the others had strange expressions on their faces when they heard Meg's words. It seemed like something wasn't quite right. "There is no such rule. Please come in." The waiter returned the invitation to Meg with a complicated expression. "Thank you." Meg put away the invitation and prepared to continue walking. "Wait, can this lady remove the unidentified object on her head? This may cause trouble for the other guests." The waiter noticed Connie in the crowd and reached out to stop them. Everyone's gaze landed on Connie. She looked like a petite girl, but the strange thing she was wearing covered her entire head. Not to mention her face, even her eyes couldn't be seen. It was indeed strange. "Do you know what that thing she's wearing on her head is?" Meg asked the waiter as he gestured for Connie to come forward. "I don't know. The waiter shook her head. Then do you know that the dress she's wearing is from suede clothing, and the pre-sale price is over 15,000 copper coins? Meg continued to ask with a smile. An expensive piece of clothing. The waiter's attitude became even more respectful. Then do you know that the price of the latest headdress she's wearing is 10 times the price of this dress? Meg continued to ask. 10 times. The waiter gulped. He looked at the helmet that was glowing with a faint blue light, and it seemed to be glowing even more brightly. This helmet looks pretty cool. Where can I buy it? A young man in the back asked curiously. Is this the current trend? Covering the entire head? A noblewoman with a head full of gold and gemstone hair accessories looked thoughtfully at Connie's helmet. She made a mental note to get one custom-made when she got back. Does the banquet have any requirements for the guest's headdress? Meg continued to ask. Esteemed guests, please come in. The waiter bowed slightly in a humble manner. Meg nodded slightly and continued to walk down the red carpet with the ladies. If we're all family members, then are we family? Amy asked curiously. The women all looked at Meg with a hint of scrutiny, and a few of them had a hint of anticipation in their eyes. Meg nodded with a natural smile. Yes, of course we Amy's family. Yes, that's great, Yabamiya said with a smile. I like the feeling of family too. Everyone else also smiled. They seemed to be quite satisfied with Meg's answer. Meg breathed a sigh of relief. Although it was for the sake of passing the security check, he still wanted to give himself a thumbs up. After passing through the long corridor, they arrived at the large banquet hall. Countless candles lit up the banquet hall. Everyone was gathered in small circles and chatting. The banquet hadn't started yet. Meg led the women to a slightly secluded corner. This banquet was quite boring. If it weren't for the fact that Gloria and Cyril were going to vote today, he wouldn't have been interested in coming. As he entered, he noticed Cyril standing outside the door. Cyril's green hat was extremely eye-catching, and it was difficult for anyone to ignore him. Compared to Gloria, other than being a man, Cyril was worlds apart from Gloria. In this world, the patriarchal mindset was still deeply rooted. Someone like the Hill, who could become the head of a large family, was an exception. However, Meg was happy to see Gloria become the next head of Family Moreton, not only because they were friends, but he also had some selfish motives. Once Gloria became the head of Family Moreton, whether it was the Hill or Cyril who became the president of the Aiden Chamber of Commerce, then the Aiden Chamber of Commerce would be different from how it was now. It was equivalent to completing the flag he had set in a curve. The women were curious about the banquet, especially Yabamiya, Gina, Jane, and Raina, who had never attended a banquet like this before. They looked around curiously. Beautiful women were always the focus of attention at banquets, especially when beautiful women gathered together. Even if they were in a corner, they would still be the focus of attention. Mr. Mack, I didn't expect you to come too. And all the beautiful ladies in the restaurant are here too. Are we lucky enough to eat Mr. Mack's food tonight? A voice sounded from the side. Meg turned around and saw the president of the Food Association, Robert, walking over with a glass of red wine. He smiled and said, "What a coincidence to meet President Robert here. I'm just here to sit around today. I'm not in charge of the food." Oh, that's a pity. Robert felt that it was a pity, but he didn't dwell on this topic. After exchanging some pleasantries with Meg, he was taken away by the others who came up to chat with him. Some of the restaurant's regulars came to greet Meg. Amy's was the most famous restaurant in Chaos City, so it wasn't strange for the members of the Aiden Chamber of Commerce to frequent the restaurant. After all, normal people couldn't afford to eat there every day. After the women got Meg's permission, they began to walk around the banquet hall. Amy brought Anna to the buffet area and started to eat without holding back. "I'm warning you, if you try to touch me with your dirty hands again, you will die a horrible death." A cold and annoyed voice sounded from the side. Meg turned around and saw Barbara looking coldly at a blonde youth who was blocking her way. Chapter 1448. Huh. Which family's young mistress are you? I'm asking for your name because I think highly of you. How dare you talk to me like that? Aren't you afraid of being chased out together with your parents? That blonde youth looked at Barbara mockingly. Because he was taller than Barbara by a head, he had a sense of condescension and arrogance. The commotion attracted the attention of the people around them. Isn't that young Master Roy from the Dodges family? Which family's young mistress is that? How did she offend this devil's incarnate? I heard that young Master Roy likes small girls the most. Tisk, isn't that a perverted lolicon? I'm not sure if a lolicon is perverted, but this young master is definitely a pervert. This young mistress is really unlucky to have offended him. Soon, someone recognized that blonde youth's identity and started discussing softly. Dodge's family? Meg raised his eyebrows. He wasn't worried that Barbara would be taken advantage of. After all, this princess of the Moon Nation was also a powerful 7th-tier spatial magic caster. Killing this young master with a bad reputation was as easy as killing an ant for her. Instead, he was more worried that Barbara would be too heavy-handed. If she killed someone, it wouldn't be easy to clean up the mess. Of course, Barbara's identity was many times more honorable than a young master from a business family. However, this world's understanding of the Moon Nation was still at the level of Chong, flying to the moon. If he claimed that Barbara was the princess of the Moon Nation and applied for an exemption for her, he was afraid that he would be seen as contempt of court and be beaten to death on the spot. Roy looked at the young lady in front of him and couldn't suppress the lust in his heart. This height, this body proportion, it was completely in his zone. He hadn't seen such a cute girl in a long time. Compared to her, his so-called girlfriend was like heaven and earth. Even her angry look made him feel that she was very cute. As one of the 4 young masters of Chaos City and the only heir of the Dodges family, he had never failed to get the girls he wanted. When those girls knew his identity, their eyes would light up. That was his favorite moment. Roy lowered his head to look at Barbara and smiled arrogantly. Now, I'll give you a chance. Kiss my hand and beg for my forgiveness. As the successor of the Dodges family, I'll consider giving you a chance to forgive your foolish mistake. Kiss your hand and beg for your forgiveness. Barbara looked at Roy's stubby fingers with disgust. Sure enough, not every man's hands were as good-looking as her boss. She wanted to destroy this shameless guy. As for the Dodges family, what was that? Yes, to be able to kiss such a noble hand like mine is your honor. Roy raised his right hand and shone it under the light. Then, he looked at Barbara with a wretched smile. Of course, if you let me pinch your cheeks, I will let it go. As he said that, Roy reached out his hand and touched Barbara's cheek. He seemed to have already seen this girl's shy look under his pinch. Eat shit, you idiot! Before Roy's hand could touch Barbara's cheek, Barbara had already raised her hand and gave him an uppercut on his chin. The Lolita, who was a head taller than her, was instantly KO'd. Her body flew backward and landed in the middle of the banquet hall 3 meters away. There was an uproar in the banquet hall. The guests all stepped back and looked at Roy, who was sent flying by a punch, in shock. Who dared to provoke this young master at the Aiden Chamber of Commerce's year-end banquet? After all, the Dodges family was one of the founding families of the Aiden Chamber of Commerce. Roy held his swollen chin. He was in so much pain that tears flowed out. He turned his head and spat out 2 broken teeth. He pointed at Barbara with a sobbing tone and said, "You hit me. If your dirty hands touched me, you would have been dead," Barbara said coldly as she retracted her fist. "Who is this girl? She is so fierce. She did what I wanted to do a long time ago. If not for the fear of the Dodges family's revenge. Someone actually dared to hit young Master Roy. It seems like there will be more than one good show tonight. How lively." Everyone looked at Roy, who was spitting out his teeth, and Barbara, who was not tall but had a strong aura, and started discussing. Oh no, Barbara is in trouble. Mia looked at Barbara, who was in the crowd, and hurriedly walked towards her. Don't worry, that guy can't hurt her. Elizabeth pulled her wrist gently and said softly, "Let's leave this matter to the boss. It's not suitable for us to stand out here." Yabamia thought for a while and nodded. Even if she went forward, she really wouldn't know what to do. Jane covered her face in the crowd. She didn't expect her hometown dialect to be used so quickly after Barbara asked her to teach her 2 days ago. However, she looked at Barbara worriedly. Would she cause trouble for beating someone up? Meg nodded with satisfaction when he saw that. She only lost 2 teeth. It was a very reasonable and perfect ending. He tidied his clothes and prepared to go out to ease the atmosphere before bringing this matter to a close. Roy looked at Barbara and felt a chill run down his spine. He had a feeling that this fellow wasn't just saying it for fun. However, Roy knew that he had lost all his dignity after being sent flying by a young lady with 1 punch by so many people. Even if he went out with the title of one of the 4 young masters of Chaos City, he would most likely be laughed at. He instantly became frustrated and shouted, "Guards! Guards! Arrest this crazy woman and send her to the Batai prison. I want her to stay there for the rest of her life." A few guards rushed out from the side and looked at Barbara hesitantly. Although Roy had a distinguished status, this young lady's identity was unknown. Most of the people who could attend this banquet were people they couldn't afford to offend. "Roy, my son, what happened to you?" At this moment, a fat, middle-aged man quickly walked out from the crowd and came to Roy. He was lying on the ground with half of his face swollen and bloodstains at the corner of his mouth. 2 broken teeth stood out in a mouthful of blood and phlegm on the ground. Roy looked at that fat man with tears flowing down his face. He pointed a finger at Barbara and cried as he said, "Father, that bitch hit me. She knocked my teeth out. You can't let her off." That fat man turned to look at Barbara and angrily said, "Bastard, how dare she hit my son, Harvey? Guards, you bunch of trash. Arrest her and send her to Batai prison. Lock her up for 50 years. Although the guard were a little hesitant, it was Harvey who spoke, so they still surrounded Barbara. "You're indeed father and son. Even your words are exactly the same." Right at this moment, Meg walked out from the crowd and stood in front of Barbara. He looked at Harvey and Roy and sarcastically said, "Does your family own Batai prison? Do you think you can lock her up for as long as you want?" Chapter 1449. Who is this uncle with a bit of ruffian aura? He's so handsome when he's standing in front of that lady. He's Mr. Mac from Mamie's. Don't you know? It's a restaurant that's super popular recently. Mr. Mac's chicken is delicious. Mr. Mac is as tough as ever. However, he won't be chased out because of this, right? The guests' eyes lit up when they saw Meg stepping forward. Many of them were amused. Many of them couldn't stand the domineering behavior of Harvey and Roy. Everyone was discussing softly, and some ladies even started to form the cutest height difference couple with glowing eyes. How annoying. Wouldn't it be better to just kill this kind of scum? Barbara looked at Meg's back view, and a tinge of frustration flashed across her eyes. She thought for a while, and slowly put down her right hand that was already open. "Who are you? How dare you talk to me like that?" Harvey looked at Meg with a dark gaze. As the vice president of the Aden Chamber of Commerce and the head of the Dodges family, he had a very high status in Chaos City's business world. When had he ever been mocked in public? Meg smiled and said, "I'm Meg. Chaos City respects freedom of speech. Do I need courage to talk to you? Don't tell me you can raise that fat arm of yours and jump up to hit me on the chin." The banquet hall fell silent for a moment. Everyone looked at the short and fat Harvey, and the banquet hall burst into laughter. Many people turned their heads away and tried hard to control their expressions. A stern-looking uncle took out a silk handkerchief and helped the lady opposite him wipe her clothes apologetically. He said, "I've been through strict training. No matter how funny it is, I won't laugh. Unless I can't help it." Harvey's face turned green and red. The laughter around him felt like a loud slap to his face. He had never experienced such humiliation before. He clenched his fists and coldly said to Meg, "Kid, you're playing with fire." "Playing with fire?" Meg smiled. "My daughter is very good at playing with fire. If you ask sincerely, I don't mind letting her play with you for a while." "You?" Harvey pointed at Meg, his hand trembling uncontrollably. He took a few deep breaths to calm himself down. He looked at Meg and sneered. "Do you know how long she will be in prison for the crime of malicious assault?" "Malicious attack?" Meg's face was full of doubt. He looked around at the surrounding guests and asked, "May I ask everyone, what happened just now, wasn't it a weak, pitiful and innocent little lowly who was facing a tall and fat young master who was trying to molest her and had no choice but to raise her small fists and resist. Meg looked at Harvey again and asked seriously, "Do you know how many years he can spend in prison for molesting an underage girl? How many strong men did he have to pick up soap for? As a harboring criminal, don't you have to stay in prison for a period of time?" The guest's expressions were a little strange, although it seemed to be the case at first, and it was indeed Roy who touched Barbara first and tried to take advantage of her. But this girl looked weak, but that was obviously an iron fist. How was she shy? King, a strong man with a punch. Among the guests present, there were not many who could do that. However, Meg's analysis was reasonable, and he successfully took the moral and legal high ground. The words of picking up soap were even more wonderful. Sure enough, Harvey and his father's faces changed color. They were used to being arrogant, and they were not used to meeting someone who was so tough. "Father, I don't want to go to prison. I don't want to pick up soap." Roy grabbed Harvey's sleeve. His face was pale, and he was a little scared. Harvey calmed down a little. He looked at Meg and said, "You're talking nonsense. How could my son do anything to her in public?" But everyone saw her hitting someone. Don't think that you can distort the truth just because you have a sharp tongue. Many people present can testify for us. You can't run away today. Run? Why should we run? If you think that you can change the truth by relying on numbers, then you're overestimating your influence and the Grey Temple's ability to do things. Right? Meg said with a smile. If they were talking about connections, he was really not afraid. After all, he still had a hidden position in the City Lord's castle, and was considered one of them in the system. Harvey looked at Meg, who was unmoved by force or persuasion, and was so angry that his face turned red. However, those few guards were frightened by Meg and did not dare to go forward. They had the mentality of watching from afar and did not have the slightest intention to help Harvey. Boss is so awesome. He didn't do anything, and he already scared them. Yabamiya looked at Meg with glowing eyes. In comparison, he felt that his mouth was fake. Elizabeth was also looking at Mag with approval in her eyes, even though she was a little surprised by Mag's eloquence, which was a stark contrast to his usual friendly demeanor. It was still a good trait to be tough on outsiders. TSK. Seems like I don't even have to do anything. Camilla swirled the red wine in her wine glass at the railing on the second floor and chuckled. From this angle, Meg was rather good-looking. Wrong? What's wrong with me? Why would I think that men are good-looking? Men are all pigs. They're not good things. Camilla shook her head quickly to get rid of the strange thoughts in her mind. What's going on? At this moment, a sinister voice sounded. The guests parted to create a path for Cyril, who was wearing a bright red robe and a green hat, to make his way in. He took a glance at Mag, and his brows furrowed slightly. What was this guy doing here? Then his gaze fell on Roy, who was still sitting on the ground with half his face swollen, and Harvey, who was blushing. His expression changed slightly, and he asked, "Vice President Harvey, what happened to you?" "This guy, he's an adult, and he even framed us, saying that he wants to lock us up in Bodhi prison," Harvey complained while pointing at Meg. "Great, I finally got the chance." Cyril's eyes lit up, and he turned around to look at Meg and Barbara, who was standing behind him. He frowned and said, "You're not from the Aiden Chamber of Commerce at all. How did you sneak in? Could it be that you're a thief who sneaked in a freeload? Now, you even dare to maliciously hurt Roy and slander the vice president of the Chamber of Commerce. Guards, tie the two of them up and send them directly to the Grey Temple." After all, Cyril was the president's son and had always been seen as the successor of Family Moraton. After hearing his order, the guards who were watching at the side could no longer sit still and surrounded Meg and Barbara. Some of them even took out ropes. "Wait!" At this moment, a crisp voice sounded from outside the crowd. At the same time, the voice of the MC at the door sounded. "Director Gloria has arrived." Chapter 1450. The crowd parted to make a path for Gloria, who was wearing a blue evening gown. She was as elegant and moving as ever, making everyone's eyes light up. The guards stopped in their tracks and looked at Gloria, then looked at Cyril before silently retreating to their original positions. Cyril looked at Gloria, who was walking over, and frowned. He knew that Meg and the others were related to Gloria. He wanted to embarrass them before she arrived, so that Gloria would be embarrassed as well, but he didn't expect her to arrive so early. The guests were also looking at Gloria. Everyone knew that the main characters of this year's end-of-year banquet were Gloria and Cyril. The fight between the two of them for the position of Family Moreton's successor was gradually becoming more and more intense, and it was possible that the winner would be decided tonight. And now, the show seemed to have arrived early. Gloria came to Meg's side and gave him an apologetic nod. Then she looked at Cyril and said, "Uncle Cyril, Mr. Meg, and the others from Amy's are my guests. Please don't use the word thief to describe them. It will make you look unreasonable and arrogant." The guests seemed to understand something. So this gentleman was invited by Miss Gloria and the others. It seemed that Cyril's hostility towards them made sense. I'm unreasonable and arrogant. I think it's these so-called guests you invited who are the real arrogant ones. They dared to openly attack Vice President Harvey's son, Roy. Cyril looked at Gloria with a cold smile and said in a somewhat aggressive manner, "Gloria, as a director of the Chamber of Commerce, don't you know the rules of the banquet? Before you invited the guests, didn't you properly check their character? I don't think you are a qualified director of the Chamber of Commerce." Upon hearing that, all the guests began to look at Gloria with a contemplative expression. Although Sheer had already proven that age and status as a woman didn't necessarily represent one's abilities, compared to Sheer, who had displayed astonishing aptitude from a young age, this young Mistress Gloria, who had appeared out of nowhere, did indeed seem to be lacking in abilities. It was said that a board meeting would be held at today's end-of-year meeting. Cyril had formally proposed a vote to remove Gloria from her position as a board member, and the board of directors had agreed. The current situation made some neutral directors start to seriously examine Gloria. Most of the directors did not know much about this young lady who had suddenly emerged to compete with Cyril for the position of Family Moreton's successor. They only knew that she seemed to have established a clothing store that was doing quite well recently. However, $1 million profit was nothing to them. It was not enough to prove that she was capable enough to take on the position of the director of the Aden Chamber of Commerce and the successor of Family Moreton. Mr. Meg is the owner and head chef of Mamie's. He once won the Best Chef Award at the banquet held by the King of the Roth Empire. He single-handedly raised Chaos City's status among the major cities in the world. He insisted on providing free breakfast for the cleaners every day and spent a large amount of money to sponsor poor children to go to school. Is there anything wrong with such a kind and gentlemanly person's character? Gloria's gaze landed on Roy, who was still sitting on the floor. She raised her voice and said, "As for Vice President Harvey's son, Roy, I'm sure all the guests here have heard about his reputation and character. If there's a character threshold for entry into the banquet, he should be the first to be denied entry, right? Why, you're spouting nonsense." Roy yelled at Gloria angrily. Gloria looked at Roy and said, "I heard a few days ago that someone ran into a pregnant woman on a horse and caused her to have a miscarriage. After that, the matter was suppressed by a large sum of money and threats, and the Grey Temple was not informed about it. There's such a thing?" All the guests' expressions changed. It was a rule that horses were not allowed at the city gates. Running into a pregnant woman and causing her to have a miscarriage was a crime in their eyes. Although Gloria did not mention any names, could this matter really have something to do with Roy? Meg, who had not spoken since Gloria appeared, looked at Gloria with surprise. This last seemed to have come prepared. Cyril's expression also changed slightly. He looked at Harvey and his son with an uncertain expression. He had not heard of this before. Roy's expression changed, and he stuttered. That's because she was running around on the street." "I shut up." Harvey gave him a tight slap across his face and wished he could slap him back into his mother's womb. He could still talk his way out of this matter, but now he had confirmed it. He looked at Gloria with a pale face. He had already dealt with this matter very discreetly. "So how did she find out? Looks like the rumor is true. You were the one who ran into the pregnant woman who was about to give birth. You ran on a horse in the middle of the street and caused the death of a pregnant woman, but you did not regret it at all. You even accused the poor mother. You pretended that nothing happened and attended the banquet openly. You even flirted with an underage girl in public. You even accused her after she resisted. Do you know what is righteousness and shame? Gloria looked at Roy, and her voice was full of anger. Roy's expression was evasive. He subconsciously hid behind Harvey and did not dare to look at Gloria directly. He's a fucking scumbag. What a pitiful child. What a pitiful mother. This is no different from murder. You can really do whatever you want with money. I can't believe you can cover up this kind of thing. The guests looked at Roy with anger and disdain. Their emotions changed instantly. Gloria turned to Cyril, who had a dark face, and said seriously, "Uncle Cyril, you're defending a murderer who killed a baby and a pervert who flirted with a young girl. You're trying to confuse right and wrong. You're trying to turn the victim into the perpetrator. Is this what you should do as the director of the Aden Chamber of Commerce? Is this what you, as the father of two girls, should say? I respect you as an elder, but I advise you to be kind." Cyril opened his mouth. He wanted to defend himself, but his mind was in a mess. This change was completely out of his expectation and plan. He did not know how to deal with it. The guests looked at Cyril with disgust and disgust. Cyril was obviously on Roy's side. Snakes and rats from the same nest. None of them were good people. A few of the older board members shook their heads as they looked at Cyril. Then, their gazes landed on Gloria, and a hint of admiration appeared in their eyes. This girl, it seems that I don't have to worry about anything. In time, she will be able to compete with Mr. Hill at the same level. Meg also looked at Gloria with admiration. He had changed his mind about the textile and weaving factory. Maybe Gloria would be a more suitable partner. Wonderful book house. Chapter 1451. You? Harvey pointed at Gloria. He wanted to say a few harsh words, but after seeing the disdainful looks he received, his momentum weakened instantly. He snorted coldly and pulled Roy, who was covering his face with his hands and looking flustered, out quickly. Very good. You're smarter than I expected. Cyril made his way over to Gloria and lowered his voice as he said, "However, all of this is futile. You're going to lose everything tonight. I still like the way you hide in a dark room with a hood on your head. You should stay like that for the rest of your life. Then I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. Since I've decided to come out, I won't go back." Gloria smiled and said, "Besides, I'm different from you. Everything you have is a gift, but everything I have is earned through my own hard work. You can't take it away from me. I hope you can still smile later." Cyril clenched his fists and left angrily. Gloria let out a sigh of relief. Her tense body relaxed, and she realized that her palms were sweaty. This big sister is so beautiful, and she's so righteous. She's super awesome. Sister, she's the boss of Blue Suede. The clothes that the group of girls were wearing are the new clothes that they're about to release. It seems like they're really working with Blue Suede. No wonder they could get the new clothes. The owner is so young. She's so beautiful. The girls looked at Gloria with admiration and amazement. Then, the topic quickly changed to how they could get their hands on Suede's new line. In a private room on the second floor, a white-haired old man chuckled and said, "It seems that the rumors about young Mistress Gloria are a little off. Her ability to adapt and conduct herself on the spot is far superior to Cyril's. Among the younger generation, I haven't seen anyone other than Cyril who can compare to her. Yeah, it looks like the Hill has a rival, just like me and Jeffrey." Ian Buffet also nodded with a smile, and he was also appraising Gloria with an appreciative look in his eyes. At the mention of the past, a hint of nostalgia appeared in his eyes. Gloria's rebuke of Harvey, his son, and Cyril was praised by most of the guests present. After all, many of them were afraid of Harvey and Cyril's status. Even though they had seen what had just happened with their own eyes, they didn't dare to say anything. Gloria turned around and looked at Meg and Barbara. She said apologetically, "I'm sorry, Mr. Meg and Miss Barbara. I made you suffer." "Sister Gloria, why are you apologizing? You're not the one at fault. Besides, I've already taught that guy a lesson," Barbara said with a relaxed expression, but her gaze toward Gloria was filled with affection. After all, They had just picked out beautiful new clothes from her shop at noon. Moreover, what she admired most was that Gloria was able to rebuke those guys with words. She had reason and evidence, and she had made everyone stand on their side. Wasn't this ability too amazing? This is nothing to us, but it was an interesting debate just now. Meg also looked at Gloria with a smile. Gloria obviously knew about Roy's incident in advance. However, the conflict between them and Harvey and Roy had been sudden. Gloria was able to rebuke the other party and put Cyril in a bad situation at the same time. Her ability to adapt and her ability to see the big picture had refreshed his understanding of Gloria. Meg had watched this girl take off her veil and start to live like a normal person. He had watched her decide to leave her boudoir and step into the business world. He had witnessed her growth with his own eyes. He was moved by her fast learning speed and strong learning ability. "Thank you." Gloria's face flushed. Receiving Meg's praise made her happier than rebuking Cyril just now. "You go to your work first. We'll do whatever we want. Tonight is very important for you," Meg said with a smile. "Okay, if you need anything, please let me know immediately." Gloria nodded slightly. She did have a lot of things to do right now. For example, she had to take the opportunity to meet some of the board members that she hadn't been able to meet before. Although the Hill had agreed to stand on her side, her votes were still in danger. Damn that guy. How dare he collude with Miss Gloria again? Camilla glared at Meg, feeling as if her heart was bleeding. The guests arrived one after another. Meg heard some familiar names and also saw some familiar guests. After some simple greetings, he sat in a corner and slowly sipped his wine. Wouldn't it be better to just beat that guy to death? Why waste so much time talking? Camilla sat down beside Meg without him noticing. She took a sip of her wine and looked at Meg with a smile. "If you can't beat him, you can beg me. We are civilized people. You have to learn from Gloria. If you can solve things with words, don't beat people to death," Meg said calmly. His eyes followed Gloria, who was elegantly walking through the crowd and chatting with people with a smile on her face. "What nice girl. You're not allowed to look at her." Camilla suddenly stood up and stood in front of Meg. "Countess Bartoli, there are a lot of people watching here." Meg looked up at Camilla with a smile. He knew that she liked Gloria and was just teasing her. Camilla also realized that her action of blocking Meg's line of sight was a little childish. If other people saw it, it might cause some bad guesses. She quickly sat back down and said softly with clenched teeth, "Don't force me. I'm a man who has 2 photo stones," Meg said calmly. "You?" Camilla's face immediately turned red. She looked at Meg with shame and anger. How did she provoke such a pervert who had a photo stone with him at all times? Meg had something on her, so Camilla chose to shut herself up and didn't say anything. "Speaking of which, I do have someone to kill tonight. Are you interested in joining me?" Meg leaned his body towards Camilla and raised his wine glass as a cover as he said softly. "Kill who?" Camilla was instantly interested. "Castor, an information dealer. His people have been loitering around the restaurant recently. He should be here for Connie." Meg used the glass to point to the right. There was a middle-aged man in a tight purple suit. An unchallenging target. Camilla only glanced at that person before looking away in boredom. "Before I kill him, I need to get some useful information from him. So, we need to find a little dark room." A little dark room. Camilla's eyes instantly lit up and showed an eager expression again. "I'm good at this." Chapter 1452. Castor was flirting with a blonde and stroking his short beard habitually with his right hand. However, he was secretly sizing up Connie, who was squatting in a corner and drawing circles. Although her head was completely covered by the helmet, that frail and petite figure gradually matched with that princess in his memory. After this period of investigation, he could basically confirm that this employee of Amy's who never showed her face was Princess Connie of the Falk tribe. As an outstanding information provider, his information network was all over the Norland continent, and he had friends all over the world. His motto was that as long as he had the money, there was no information that he couldn't get and no person that he couldn't find. Before the Falk tribe fell into chaos, he had also provided Gary with a series of information, including the living habits of all the former chief's family members, so as to ensure that Gary's men would be able to capture or kill everyone accurately during the operation. Gary's rebellion was very successful. The chief and his wife were killed on the spot, and his children and supporters were also captured or killed. If that little girl hadn't escaped, this operation would have been another masterpiece on his resume that he could boast about. Unfortunately, the chief forcefully created a way out for her before he died, and allowed her to escape all the way from the Twilight Forest to Chaos City. She also successfully shook off the orcs who were chasing after her. In order to erase this flaw, he came to Chaos City personally and finally locked onto his target after laying low for half a month. He hadn't found a chance to make his move previously, but he didn't expect to meet her at this banquet today. It was a pretty good opportunity. Gary would officially ascend the throne a few days later. If he could capture Connie and send her to him, it would definitely bring him a sizable income. "Connie, come with me for a while," Meg said as he stood up and walked to Connie and patted her shoulder gently. "Huh?" As she couldn't eat while wearing the helmet, and it felt weird to talk to people, Connie, who could only squat in the corner and draw circles in boredom, looked up. She quickly stood up and followed after Meg when she saw him walking out. Leaving, Castor watched as Connie walked to the side door. He smiled at the blonde girl he was talking to and signaled that he needed to leave. He walked to the side door quietly. If he could catch her alone, tonight's banquet would be over for him. This guy really isn't a good person. Camilla's gaze turned cold as she watched Castor follow Meg and the others out. She put down the wine glass in her hand and walked towards the side door unhurriedly. "Boss, where are we going? Aren't you going to wait in the banquet hall?" Connie asked softly as she walked behind Meg. "We need to find a small dark room now," Meg said calmly. "Little black room." Connie's expression immediately tensed up, and she couldn't help but slowed down a little. She looked at Meg's back nervously and cautiously and said, "Boss, don't do that. I'm not that kind of person." Meg stopped and turned back to look at Connie. He suddenly realized that this girl was probably thinking the wrong way. He held her helmet with one hand and led her forward as he said, "Someone is following us. We need to find a small dark room to catch him and see what he's going to do." "Is that so?" Connie wanted to turn her head and look behind her. "Don't turn back in case he suspects something." Meg put his hand on Connie's shoulder and raised a finger to press against her helmet to prevent her from turning back. "Oh," Connie responded and stopped moving, allowing Meg to lead her forward. What are they going to do? The banquet is about to start, but they're walking around at this time. Could there be some unspeakable secret between them? Castor hid in the darkness and looked at the two people who disappeared at the stairs of the long corridor. He had a puzzled expression on his face. After waiting for a while, he quickly followed. The second floor was the office area of the Aiden Chamber of Commerce. Everyone was at the banquet hall now, and the office area was pitch black without a single person. It was a good opportunity to make a move. Castor came to the stairs and listened carefully. After making sure that no one was on the stairs, he walked up softly. He pulled out the dagger at his waist with his right hand and looked a little vigilant. He had the strength of a 6th-level knight, and it was more than enough to deal with Princess Connie. That princess had never cultivated before, so she was just a helpless little chick in front of him. Castor came to the staircase on the 2nd floor. He leaned against the wall and listened carefully for a while. Faint footsteps came from the corridor on the right. He slowly poked his head out of the wall and looked in the direction of the corridor. The corridor appeared in his sight, followed by a huge black shadow. He judged that it was a huge club 1 second before he fainted. Bam! With a muffled sound, Camilla looked at the unconscious Castor on the ground and casually struck the black club in her hand on the ground. She clapped her hands in satisfaction and said, "Done." Meg walked over from the corridor with Connie. He looked at the black club in Camilla's hand and raised his eyebrows. He was also a victim of this black club. Speaking of which, Camilla was indeed very good at sneaking up on people. "Is he dead?" Meg lifted his leg and kicked Castor. "No. How could a professional like me kill him with just one hit?" Camilla shook her head as if it was a matter of course. "That's good." Meg reached out and grabbed Castor's collar. He dragged him to the end of the corridor and pushed open the door to the storeroom. After the three of them went in, he closed the door again. This was obviously a small room for storing stuff. There were walls on all sides, and it was airtight. It was very suitable for Meg's requirements for a small dark room. Camilla raised her hand to set up a soundproof barrier. At the same time, she took out 2 night-luminescent pearls and slapped them on the wall. The small dark room lit up instantly. Connie took off his helmet and leaned in to look at Castor. He frowned slightly. Why do I feel that this person looks a little familiar? I remember now. He was by Gary's side during the previous banquet, so he took part in the rebellion too. During Gary's rebellion, he played the role of providing information, Meg said softly. Bastard. I'm going to kill him. Sharp claws shot out from Connie's fingertips, and he was about to stab Castor's heart. We need to get some information from him. It won't be too late to kill him after we're done. Meg reached out and grabbed Connie's wrist. He then looked at Camilla and said, How do we wake him up? It's simple, as long as it hurts enough. Camilla lifted her hard and thin heel and stepped on Castor's crotch. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.